Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin this final town meeting on a dreary night, let us reflect on our progress to date and look forward to an informative meeting this evening. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, let me start by giving you the order of activities tonight. We had some postponements, as you know, and the first order of business this evening is going to be Articles 6 and 7, which are the so-called pansy patch. And then we have Article 8, which was postponed to a time certain, that time being when Tom Howley came back, and he has returned. And we will then hear Article 8, followed by Article 9, which is the Lock property. I'm sorry, that is the farm. What's the name of the farm? And then we have Article 19, 20, and 21. And those are really housekeeping motions that, at least at this time, appear to require a motion for indefinite postponement. So our order really is 6 and 7, followed by 8, 9, 11, and then the three wrap-up motions. First article is Article 6, to see if the town of Winchester will vote to amend the Winchester zoning bylaw by adding a attached residential cluster development overlay district. And ladies and gentlemen, you should have a motion to that effect. And it's moved and seconded that the town of Winchester vote to amend the zoning bylaw by amending and or adding the following sections with regard to the attached residential cluster development overlay district, ARCDOD. And then it reads exactly as is in the handout that you have. The chair recognizes who is the main proponent on that. That's Mr. Van Aken. Come on up, Peter. And ladies and gentlemen, today I received a motion to amend the main motion. And if I could ask you to bear with me for a second. Mr. Van Aken, you want me to put those two amendments prior to your presentation, is that correct?
If you would, sir.
Okay, these two amendments are really technical in nature to clean up the language that's in the zoning article so that it is consistent with what has been agreed to by the planning board, the developer, and the Board of Selectmen in the negotiation of the agreement that's outlined in Article 7. And so if you look at your zoning article, it's moved and seconded that Section 6.56, which is called open space, be amended so that the last sentence of the first paragraph reads as follows. Paved surfaces, parking areas, and vehicular access facilities and structures such as pools, tennis courts, decks, patios, or fountains shall not be considered in calculating open space. That change, although it sounds very technical, all that really means that we have inserted decks and patios so that if they are, they will not be counted in calculating open space. Any questions on that amendment? All those in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. Motion number 2, in section 6.57, which is known as the buffer zone requirements. In the next to last sentence of the first paragraph, we're going to just put in a provision so that to make it a little more restrictive by putting the Zoning Board of Appeals in as a judge in certain potential deviations within that zone. And so it's moved and seconded that the next to last sentence of the first paragraph be amended so that it reads as follows. within said buffer zone surface parking areas, decks and/or ground-level patios may be constructed where the ZBA deems appropriate, but no principal structure shall be permitted. Anybody have any questions on that technical change? Yes, sir. Mr. Conti.
The proponent of this amendment explain what the necessity for the town to interfere in the layout of a structure in such a location. I mean, it seems to me to be unnecessarily busybodiness, frankly, for the town to be telling people where they can put structures on their property. I mean, this is not a question of a side yard or a rear yard. This is a question of an internal layout within the structure. It seems overly burdensome.
Mr. Van Aken, on the question on the amendment.
This specific reference is to a buffer zone, and a buffer zone has a different status than simply your backyard. It is pretty well defined in this bylaw and also in our general bylaws as an area in which most things don't happen. But occasionally it makes sense to have an escape hatch. And this change allows the ZBA to exercise its normal oversight in this regard, and I believe requires unanimous approval in that regard. But it is a safeguard that we think is appropriate.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wilson.
I would like to know what criteria the ZBA would use in evaluating this under this clause. What criteria would they use to say that a patio should go there or something?
The question is to somebody who might choose to answer is what criteria would the Zoning Board of Appeals use to evaluate this? Mr. Welch, do you want to take a shot at that?
Generally, the criteria would be as set forth in the zoning bylaw, because this will be a special permit operation, and in their the requirements for certain special permits, which are set forth in the zoning bylaw, they consider such as part of their overall review. They do consider amenities such as this.
Mr. Wilson, does that answer your question, sir?
If I might add just one thing, the development agreement, which is a part of the next article, does call out that ground-level patios would be appropriate if basically within 15 feet of the building, decks would not. I would expect that the ZBA would pretty much adhere to that standard. So that, I think, is a criteria that is going to be unique to the Pansy Patch because of the development agreement, but is more generic in the overview, the overlay.
Let me see if I can clear this up, because it's really unfair for the town meeting members to have a change, even though I think most people would consider it minor, where you don't have that change in front of you to read it like I do. The present language in this particular zone, speaking in the areas of buffer area, and a buffer area is in between where you're allowed to build in the street or the lot line. It says, within said buffer zone, surface parking area, decks or patios may be constructed, but no principal structure shall be permitted. To me, that means you can't build your garage in the buffer zone. And it says that you may be able to put a piece of your driveway or a piece of your patio. But the weakness that I think this amendment corrects is what Mr. Wilson was trying to ask and failed, was that what is the criteria here? And rather to try to spell out that criteria, what the planning board and the developers did was pass that criteria, that decision, on to the control group for zoning, the Zoning Board of Appeals, so that if a homeowner or a lot owner has what he considers to be a legitimate need to do that, and it might be as simple as safety or something, or convenience. He has a place he can go. The word may doesn't give him any criteria here, and what Mr. Welch was saying is that the special permit, the Zoning Board of Appeals, acting as a judge, evaluates what's in the best interest of all concerned and makes that decision. So I hope that clears it up a little. Mr. Ahern.
As I read this, it sounds as though there's a 20-foot buffer zone. But if you wish to put a deck, it could go the full 20 feet and perhaps be 15 or 20 feet high, so that someone could be right next to their neighbor's property line and their bedrooms and living room and what have you. Seems to me to be an intrusion on the abutters, if what I'm describing is accurate.
Mr. Van Aken.
I believe deck is considered by the building commissioner to be a part of the primary structure, and as such, I don't think would end up in that configuration and could not.
Mr. Ahern, on a follow-up.
Patios may be permitted.
Okay.
That is correct. Further on the question? Yes. Wait for the mic. Yep.
If the, my feeling is that the buffer zone is only 20 feet. It should be a buffer zone and not a driveway or part of a structure. And, you know, we've lived in a few developments, condo developments, that have, you know, certain restrictions too, but I think that's a bit wide ranging.
Thank you very much. Further on the question, Ms. Burkhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Would it be in order to propose an amendment to the amendment that said within said buffer zone, parking areas, decks and/or ground level patios may not be constructed? Because I think Mr. Ahern's point is an excellent one, that 20 feet is a pretty short span. And if you are allowed, subject to the determination of the ZBA, to build a deck or a patio, there goes your buffer zone. So I guess it's first a procedural question and then a substantive one if the amendment is permitted.
Yes, I think generally speaking, we'd have to clean up that language. I don't like to change zoning language at the town meeting, but this has been opened up by the planning board. We got this motion this afternoon, and I don't think, nobody has a handout on this, do they? No. And so I think, Ms. Burkhardt, that would be a permissible motion. Obviously, it's making the zoning for this development more restricted, but the fact that it doesn't apply to anybody yet, you know, it's not a non-conforming use issue. Does that answer your question? Mr. Ahern? Just a second, Mr. Ahern. Couldn't hear you. Why don't you hold just until the train goes by?
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think subject to your correction, this zoning law will apply to every piece of property in Winchester. It's not just this particular development. Is that correct?
No, that's not right. I believe this is an overlay district, right? And
This is an overlay, and it doesn't apply to any site until this town meeting rezones that site into this overlay district. So the first motion tonight is to create the district. The second, if the district is created, there is a petitioner that wishes to put the pansy patch land into it. But that's all that it affects. It's just that one site.
further on the question? Yes, ma'am. Yes,
This is,
page 22. If you look on page 22, down in paragraph 6.57, the fourth line up starts with within. It's that sentence that is being changed. I'm sorry, the 20, yeah, that's on the article. You can see it there. You see it? Yeah, okay. Further on the question. Mr. Conti had his hand up again. Yep, take your time.
I think it's quite inappropriate for the town meeting at this stage of the game to make such a dramatic change as to ban all such activities that the planning board had determined were appropriate, such as these decks, patios, et cetera, within this buffer zone. And frankly, I don't know what people are worried about. A 20-foot barrier in my part of town is a very substantial distance between properties. I don't know how it would affect this particular project, but I suspect it could have a substantial effect on it, and I would respectfully request that we not make this any more restrictive than it already is.
Gentleman in the audience, way back, I can't see who it is, orange shirt. Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator, my name is Frank Chalant. I'm an abutter. I live at 20 Pond Street and have lived there for 20 years with my wife, Bonnie Hershey.
That's hand signal for wait for the train. Okay. Yes, sir.
Next to Attorney Mark Vaughn, who represents the developer, I have attended close to 40 meetings on this pansy patch, the overlay, and the changing of the zoning. I have the gables in my backyard, I have the front station in my front yard, and now I and almost every other direct abutter, and there are only 11 of us, are comfortable with the bylaw as you have it in front of you, and with the amendment that Mr. Van Aken has done. We've had many, many meetings with the developers, with the planning board, on and off site. We are comfortable with this. We've hammered out buffer zones. I have argued till I'm blue in the face the difference between buffer zones and setbacks, and I'm comfortable with this. And I know I can speak for 90% of the direct abutters. We're comfortable with the buffer zones as you have it, with the amendment as you have it. I would, even though I am not a member of town meeting, I'd like to move the question.
Well, you can't do that. But we're happy to have you speak. Although some nights I would hire you to do it. Mr. Parkhurst.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, I think I'd call your attention to the language external lot lines. And if you look at Exhibit D in the development agreement that was handed out tonight, I mean, this would be along Cambridge streets, Pond streets, around the perimeter of the property, so that all the units that would be constructed in the middle would not be subject to this in any event. So we would not need to concern ourselves about the buffer zone and the structures that would be within it. It's only the external lot lines. And based on the limited number of properties that could be affected by external lot lines, I would concur with the previous speaker and say that the amendment is really not necessary and that the Board of Appeals should be granted the jurisdiction here. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Further on the question, then I think we're ready to vote.
Mr. Moderator, I'm very uncomfortable voting any amendment before I've heard anything about this proposal other than an amendment put forward by the proponent. And I think generally in our town meeting, it's considered a courtesy to let the proponent make a minor amendment, hear their entire presentation, and then if we want to chop them to ribbons, we can do so at our leisure. But I feel like we're being asked to make substantive changes that the planning board doesn't want, and I don't even know what they want to do yet, Mr. Moderator.
Well, I'll leave that up to the planning board. If you wish to proceed with your presentation, or you can get a vote on the amendment.
Is it in order that I move that this be postponed or time certain?
No, you don't have to postpone it. You can just start speaking on the main motion as amended,
All right.
as amendment under consideration, and then when you get done your presentation, we'll get a report from the Finance Committee, and we will then turn it open to questions, and people can vote. The reason for the Finance Committee, they doing that because there's a development agreement associated with Article 7. And by the way, we're going to allow discussion on Article 7, obviously, at the same time as Article 6, so that we can save some time. So Mr. Van Aken, I hope, will be speaking about the district and the development, and the developer will be welcome to speak on this article if he chooses to.
If I might, I would prefer that the developer go in between, make its presentation, and we come back and comment on it.
Are you going to, do you want to vote on your zoning article first?
No, I have no problem.
I think we should vote on yours, but go ahead. We'll do whatever the town meeting wants.
But it's set up, so we sponsored this, we should bring it up.
Please do.
In terms of 7, we're not the sponsor, but we'd like to speak after the sponsor.
Fine, that's fine.
Okay. All right. So we recommend favorable action on Article 6 with these 2 floor amendments that we've just discussed. What is the purpose of this article? What it does is to create a new zoning overlay district with a long fancy name. It also gives town meeting and town boards and committees more control over large development sites within the town, and I'll speak more to this in a moment. And it only applies to sites of 10 acres, and it only applies if this body rezones it by a 2/3 vote. How many properties might be qualified? If we look at 10-acre sites in town, the Pansy Patch, Hamilton, the Shannon Estate property, the wetlands off Sunset Road, and the Country Club, interestingly enough. But that's it for 10-acre sites under private ownership that could even, at this point, be eligible to come to this town meeting to ask for rezoning. And some of those have site constraints, like the wetlands on the Kraft site, that make it virtually impossible to use for anything like this, so it's just a technical thing. Why do we need a new zoning district? What this does is allows the development of empty nest housing, which is badly needed in this community. It does that basically by allowing a greater density than single-family houses and a whole variety of constraints. It provides for better public oversight than normal. Normally, we would set up a zone, say single-family. The developer would come in, present a subdivision plan, and proceed to build out. This has an opportunity here for a town meeting to approve limits on this development as it will ask to review a development agreement in the next article. The planning board then has an opportunity to coordinate the development through a comprehensive plan review, which has to pass a majority vote in the planning board. It's at that point that we can involve people like conservation to deal with issues outside of their area of legal jurisdiction, and other historical commission or housing partnership or traffic and safety or neighborhood groups or whatever. It also gives better opportunities for these commissions to get involved at timely points in the decision-making, and at the end, the ZBA retains its traditional role for site review because this is a large site and would qualify for that. The current zoning districts, this is why do we need something new? Why can't we use what we have? We have a thing called cluster residential, but it only allows for single-family homes, and then only at a density that is in fact lower than it would without being in this district. Nobody has ever built in this district for obvious reasons. It also has very large setbacks. We have a planned residential district. That is the district used to develop the ledges. It has very large setbacks. It also has a huge site and a lot of geography issues. The planned residential district, those setbacks and buffer zones of that scale, we would submit, help to contribute toward the look and feel of a gated community, not the neighborhood down the street. And the planning board would like to foster the latter. And we believe it lacks some safeguards to produce a comprehensive site review. So we think that having a new tool in our kit would be an appropriate thing to have. Just in reference, these are the dwelling acres per unit for our largest zone, residential A. Residential B is in fact where the pansy patch is. It could be developed at this density by right without any action on the part of town meeting. The proposal here is slightly more dense, 5.6, and just as referenced, the RG district that we had a good discussion on up at Immaculate Conception is slightly higher at 6.7, and none of these exceed 10, just to note. What are the benefits for the town? It offers an alternative to the standard subdivision. It encourages the preservation of open land and the protection of the natural environment. It preserves historical and archaeological resources and the appearance of the town's traditional New England landscape. It controls flooding, drainage. This is an ecologically sensitive area, as we'll note, over at Winter Pond when we get into the next article. It facilitates construction and maintenance of streets, and it provides affordable housing opportunities. How does it work? Tonight, you're asked to approve the district to create it. And there it sits, nothing else happens until and unless someone comes forth and says, I want to rezone my 10-acre site into this. There is a petition tonight, Article 7, to do that. They are coming with a development agreement, which you'll hear about later. One aspect of which I note is to increase the size of the buffer area that we just discussed over what is the generic 20 feet. So I think that it's useful to see how that plays out. Then the property owners submit a comprehensive plan, and that is reviewed, and a majority of the planning board needs to approve that. Then it goes to the ZBA. And so we recommend that you create this planning tool that will allow all of us to have, I think, a better voice and a good tool for development in very selected sites of your choosing. Thank you.
Now, would you like me to put the amendment now, Mr. Van Aken? Okay.
I'm happy to go with it. I think that it would be helpful to hear out the development agreement and see how the specificity of that deals with the issues that have been raised, and then decide on whether or not you'd like to make that amendment.
Okay.
But
so if that's the way, then we should invite the developer down to make his presentation. Mr. Duffy, and any of your team that you want to bring down, please feel free to come down. Mr. Duffy is the main proponent of Article 7, which is to rezone the property that he owns into this new proposed district. And he will describe his plan and also be available for answering any questions. And I'm sure we'll discuss the development agreement that his firm has negotiated with the town.
Do you have a presentation?
Yeah, I think it's right now. Mr. Moderator, my name is Bob Duffy, and I thought I was going to be rising to speak on behalf of Article 7, but so I can speak as if the article passes and sort of outline our plan to town meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's
Okay.
correct.
Mr. Moderator, members of boards and committees, town meeting members, and Winchester residents. This past spring, Duffy Realty purchased a 10-acre parcel on Cambridge Street, commonly and affectionately known as the Pansy Patch. I would like to begin tonight by telling you who we are. We are a family-owned real estate company started by my grandfather, and today 10 family members work together in Waltham. Our current projects include a range of both commercial and residential developments. Currently, our portfolio of properties includes 17 office buildings and a total of 429 apartments. We have pride in what we build and prove it by continuing to live in some of our residential communities. Today, one family member resides in a Lexington subdivision we developed, and 6 family members own condominium units in a residential development we built in Hyannis. I am a resident of Wayland, and Kevin Duffy, my cousin and partner, is a resident of Lexington. Our communities deal with many of the same issues you face. We understand that no development is preferable to keeping the Pansy Patch as open space, and if a development is necessary, then a project with ample public input is often the best course for the developer and the community. Since the purchase, Kevin Duffy and I have met with and have attended over 40 meetings in Winchester prior to this article appearing before you tonight. We've met with the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, the Historical Commission, the Conservation Commission, the Board of Health, the Housing Partnership Board, the Council on Aging, the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Friends of Winter Pond, and the Town Manager. We have also hosted several neighborhood meetings at the Winchester Elks Club. As a result of these meetings, we have tried to incorporate comments and concerns raised during these meetings while trying to keep this proposal economically viable to us. When we purchased the Pansy Patch, we understood what our rights would be under existing residential zoning. For example, we knew that a subdivision plan could be designed which would allow for 23 to 25 single-family residences by extending Salisbury Street through to Cambridge Street and having a cul-de-sac or two off this new roadway. We looked at the then existing residential cluster bylaw to determine how it would apply to our site. Ironically, given the fact that under the existing cluster bylaw allows only detached units, and due to other requirements of the bylaw, when applied to our site, it would have allowed for significantly less dwelling units than what we could do by the way of a traditional subdivision. I think specifically we came to 17 units that we could construct under your current cluster zone bylaw versus the 23 to 25 single-family lots we can do under a traditional subdivision. While we also knew that the site would be a viable location for a 40B project, we heard from various town officials that this would not be something the town would embrace. Although we were approached by several 40B developers who were interested in the site, we thought that a better approach would be to work with the town in order to craft a design concept that would make sense for this parcel. Based on initial feedback we heard from local officials, leaders in the community, our neighbors, and others, we thought an appropriate use of the property would be a residential townhouse condominium community, which would be targeted towards empty nesters. It was felt that this type of proposal would be financially more viable to the town, would respect the desires of the Salisbury Street neighborhood, and would provide a type of housing which is desired within the community. The design before you was meant to be an age-in-place development. What that means is each unit would have its master bedroom on the first floor, so residents would not need to contend with stairs as they age. The community would be limited to 2 bedrooms, provided the planning board may allow no more than 3 units to have 3 bedrooms. We have proposed to eliminate any access to the development via Salisbury Street, other than emergency access only, with the emergency access area to be maintained and plowed by the condominium association. All roads and infrastructures would be privately maintained, thereby minimizing any impact on the town budget. So the plan before you, the one I sent in the mail to everybody was 53 units, and this is 50. And we lost a unit there and a unit, 2 units in the middle. And you can see that would be Salisbury Street. And we preserved the existing farmhouse, and that's what that shows on that plan. Okay, this second shows about an aerial view of a concept plan. We think it shows that some of the units, some of the distances between our units and the neighbors, although everyone obviously wants as much room as possible, we think this gives some idea of what the distance would be, the overlay of the new townhouses. This is typical units, A, B, and C units. These style units were similar to the styles that have sold well in Weston and Belmont. The garages are in front, and one of the benefits of that is to limiting the paved surfaces, which was important to us and as we talked to a lot of the neighbors. This was an A unit which fronts on Cambridge Street, so the view from somebody driving by would see front doors And in this version, the garage is in the rear. And then the last version of the D units, which also they front on Pond Street, and they would have the garages in the rear. In this type of model, you'd have to go up a flight to get to the kitchen, but because of the drop-off on Pond Street, we really didn't have any choice. We also believe that this proposal would respect the interests of Winter Pond, with a minimum 40% open space requirement and significantly less pavement than you would see with other uses. We're able to limit the amount of stormwater runoff. Moreover, we are committed to providing a drainage system which would pre-treat all runoff. While some have asked if we have considered a commercial or retail use for the property, we felt the need for large parking lots, parking lot lights, dumpsters, and other impacts would make the use adverse to the residential nature of the neighborhood as well as the interests of Winter Pond. The development agreement before you contains some of our concessions we have made and what our obligations are if we receive a special permit. The community is tapped to 50 units, down from an initial 57 units. 5 units would be affordable. It is worth noting that the affordable units will be spread throughout the community and will be of the same construction as the market rate units. The affordable units will sell for approximately $164,000, so we will incur a substantial loss on each of the affordable units sold. We have agreed to preserve the farmhouse for residential use. We expect that the farmhouse will continue to be a duplex and would be part of the condominium association. We have capped the number of bedrooms in most units to 2 bedrooms to limit the impact on your school system. We have agreed to provide the town with the drainage easement through the property to allow flexibility in addressing future drainage issues. We have committed to provide minimum setbacks, including 30 feet and 25 feet setbacks along Wedgemere and Salisbury Street property lines, respectively. We have agreed to design review by the planning board. We have agreed to pay for a consultant to work for the town of Winchester to review the plans we submit. We have agreed to fund Pond Street sidewalk improvements. We have agreed not to build a 40B project unless we receive approval from the Board of Selectmen. And we have protected the town from a conveyance to a nonprofit organization. The biggest difference between this proposal and a subdivision or a 40B is it gives Winchester more control and input than either of the alternatives. In addition to the concessions I've outlined, this proposal provides for a comprehensive review by the Planning Board and the ZPA with input from the Design Review Committee, the Conservation Commission, the Historic Commission, the Housing Partnership Board, the Town Engineer, Department of Public Works, Board of Health, Fire Chief, and Police Chief. It also provides for landscape, traffic, parking, historic, stormwater, pedestrian and bicycle circulation, and signage review. A yes vote on Article 6 and Article 7 will allow us to begin the process of obtaining a special permit. At any time, a special permit may be denied and this project would not proceed. Please consider voting for this, for both articles, so we can continue to work together with town boards and the neighbors to have a community we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That completes your presentation, sir. And Mr. Kleckner is going to speak on the development agreement, I understand.
Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Mel Kleckner, Town Manager. I wanted to comment a little more specifically about the development agreement that is the subject of a condition under Article 7. That is, the zoning is conditional upon the agreement of this development agreement, and in fact, prior to this evening, the Board of Selectmen voted unanimously to support this development agreement. What is a development agreement? Well, it really is created when there's an opportunity, and in this case, the developer is seeking to change the zoning, and so it creates an opportunity and frankly some leverage that the town has to negotiate with that developer. It is a legal agreement between two parties. In this case, it's the Board of Selectmen, the town through the Board of Selectmen, and then the developer. This agreement is recorded, and therefore it goes with the title of the land and binds successive owners. And then it is subject to zoning. Now, I've heard a lot, and I think we talked a little bit in the past about whether it's contract zoning. Well, clearly, this agreement is subject to the zoning, and zoning is subject to the development agreement, so there is a contract, but it's not illegal. The courts have ruled that it is appropriate to establish these connections as long as they specifically relate to the development and not something far outside of the development borders, and also that the town meeting is not coerced in any way, and I think that's certainly the case, that they are not. So the parties are the town through its Board of Selectmen, and really it's the town that benefits from this development agreement. We supplement the zoning and the land use by creating more restrictive controls than is available. We protect town and neighborhood issues and interests, and we provide some mitigation for this development. Now, the developer does get something out of this agreement. It helps create some certainty in the development process, and by having such an agreement, it helps assure the zoning change. So let me get into the terms of the agreement, and these numbers follow the terms that are listed in the agreement that you have. The reimbursement of the town's consulting expenses are provided under this agreement, and that is the one provision, I should say, that's not contingent on rezoning. So even if the town meeting does not pass the zoning, the developers have committed to reimburse the town its cost in pursuing this development. Number two, it creates limitations on development. So even though there's a underlying zoning that allows certain densities, this development agreement limits even further the type and density of development. And in this case, it's 50 units on this site. It also limits the mix of bedrooms, and that's done primarily to offset costs that we may incur if there's a lot of families, school-age families moving into this. It does not preclude future conditions by municipal development review boards, Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, and the Zoning Board of Appeals, for example. It does go through that process. Number three, there's some basic design issues to protect the town and the neighborhood, and I think that's why we're kind of taking this a little bit out of order, because of the issue around the setbacks and the buffers. The development agreement does provide more restrictive use of those buffers and setbacks than the overlay zoning bylaw. And I know that the developer and the planning board worked hard with the affected neighborhoods to incorporate these provisions in the development agreement. Affordable housing, it's been mentioned, but it's not insignificant. This development would create 5 units of affordable housing, meeting the town's goal under the state's 40B law, which is the affordable housing statute. And these units must be similar in all other respects. They must be, they can't be stuck in one corner of the development or made of some substandard construction materials. So these are truly equal units, but will be affordable and can be counted on the town's affordable housing inventory. Number 5, the developer has committed to protect and preserve the existing farmhouse on the property. And that is now, there has been some differences going forward with the development agreement, but the way the final agreement is that it will be protected by a legal preservation restriction that's even on top of this development agreement that will be negotiated and approved either by the Massachusetts Historic Commission or the Winchester Historical Commission. There is a easement that will be provided to the town at no cost. It will allow the town to place within it drainage, or in the event we need a sewer easement or other municipal utilities to go through that easement. Mr. Moderator, could I have 2 minutes, please?
It's moved and seconded. The speaker's time be extended 2 minutes. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Kleckner.
Thank you. Number 7 and 8, this is something that really is out there anyway that the developer would have to do, but we wanted them to acknowledge in the agreement that they have to comply with the town's looped water system design and also to pay connection fees that are in place, and we didn't want there to be any confusion or future litigation around these areas, so we included it in the agreement. Number 9, the developer must prepare studies on the town's infrastructure. That's the adequacy of water, sewer, drainage, and other important municipal infrastructure and systems. They will also fund our peer review. We will get to select the engineer or consultant who we want, and they will pay for that review. And then they must coordinate. That will be coordinated mostly down the road in these municipal development processes with Conservation Commission, Planning Board, and Zoning Board of Appeals. Number 10 is traffic and pedestrian safety. Cambridge Street, as you may know, is not under the jurisdiction of the town. It's under the jurisdiction of the Massachusetts Highway Department, and we want to make sure that the developer understands that and will comply with whatever Mass Highway says, and I don't think they'll have any choice doing that anyway, because they'll need curb cut from the State Highway Department, but we want to include that. And then I had proposed curbing and sidewalk improvements on Pond Street, and that has actually been some subject of some recent negotiations and finalized just before this meeting. I had proposed that initially that the developers improve the sidewalk on Pond Street, on one side of Pond Street, creating granite curbing and improved sidewalks all the way down to Brantwood Road. We later changed it to that they would just pay a sum of money to contribute towards that, and we reached an impasse. And so just before this meeting, it was agreed that the developer would fund $75,000, not the $20,000 that is in your version of the development agreement, and that it would be all-inclusive, that if the town was going to pursue any other off-site traffic, pedestrian safety measures, that it would be all-encompassing. But I can tell you that at this point, we feel the most important thing is to improve the pedestrian safety along Pond Street. So we now have $75,000 in this agreement to do so. And then finally, there's a supplemental tax agreement in the unlikely event, but it's possible that it could happen, that this property is someday sold to a nonprofit, a private nonprofit, educational or religious institution that is tax exempt. We would never lose the benefit of our taxes, that the developer and their successors would agree to enter into an agreement that would pay essentially a payment in lieu of taxes based on the current value as it increases by the consumer price index. So all in all, I think it's a great deal. The developers were very cooperative in doing so, and I think hopefully that will help inform you as you take votes on both Articles 6 and 7. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Van Aken, by law, the planning board has to make a recommendation on a proponent seeking a zoning approval. Do you care to do that at this time?
Yes, sir. Thank you. One moment. Okay. Yeah, slideshow?
Down right here, right down here where this little thing is right here, right there.
There we go. Okay. Mr. Moderator, the Planning Board recommends favorable action on Article 7 with the accompanying development agreement. This is the assessors map for the Pansy Patch, just a brief review of where you are. There are actually 2 lots which are described in the materials in Article 7. This is the Hess Station right in this area, and here is Pond Street. You can see this better if you move to an aerial. Winter Pond is in this area, and you can see it's directly down slope from the Pansy Patch area. There is a wetland area in the middle. There is a drop-off along Pond Street in this area, and then this is the farmland and the farmhouse. Coming in a little tighter on it, this again is the same thing. This is Salisbury Street in the lower corner that we're proposing remain a dead end except for emergency vehicles. This is the concept plan that you just saw. When the planning board learned that this property was in play, we spent a little bit of our consultant funds and asked Larry Bluestone to develop some what-if schemes. This was not done with the developer in any way, shape, or form, but we did say what might happen if you followed the zoning bylaws as they exist and developed this property. This is a possible single-family home development. This has slightly less units than was mentioned. You can see this one comes through from Salisbury and then back out onto Cambridge. There are some houses that exit right onto Cambridge. There are some other single families that exit out onto Pond Street. Another thing that we asked for was, could you develop this for some kind of mixed use, commercial and townhouses? And this was the scheme that came up. There is a retail development here at the front of the site. Townhouses in the back, accessed in Salisbury, and again, single-family homes along Pond. We asked the developer point blank why this scheme was not of interest, and they were quite candid and said the market for this just doesn't exist. This is not a very big development. It doesn't really have a good parking, and frankly, it didn't make a lot of economic sense. When we talked to the real estate people in town, they backed this up, not in this specific site, but in general. And as you know, we've had a devil of a time getting commercial development up in GBD 3, up in the north end on North Main Street. We also said what happens if you were to go 40B. This one is the condo configuration, which would build out at 8 units per acre. These are 3 garden apartments of about 4 stories, surrounded by a sea of asphalt. Keep in mind, these are possible scenarios. I'm not saying this hasn't been proposed, but this is the kind of thing that can happen. The single-family homes can be developed by right. The developer could do that right now. Any other change for a more dense requires that we change zoning or use the zoning we have, or that the 40B come into play where we have no control. We think this proposed use is consistent with the purposes of Article 6, and it requires the review of a comprehensive plan and the ZBA, as mentioned before. We think these issues will be addressed in this plan and in the special permit. The layout, the design, the new village, relationship to the abutting neighborhoods, the Cambridge Street Gateway into Winchester, traffic and pedestrian safety has already been alluded to, emergency access, access to and from Cambridge in a safe way, to and from Pond Street, wetlands and flooding. This is ecologically a very sensitive area, and the Friends of Winter Pond have been involved in the discussion for this right along from the beginning, and I believe are satisfied that this will protect and enhance Winter Pond. Conservation is very much involved. They've been involved in hearings already. Will be working with us as we do the plan review. There will be, of course, a condo agreement ultimately that deals with things like trash, emergency access, snow removal, fertilizers, so forth. Keep in mind, as a condo, the costs of maintaining the streets and roads in there are not borne by Winchester, nor do we have responsibility for the utilities which are buried as part of this. We believe the benefits are that it provides empty nester housing to address a very clear expressed need for the first floor living space, 2-bedroom, not monsters. It provides more tax revenue, we believe, than a single-family development with a lower impact on housing, on the schools, because there will be less bedrooms. and less school-age children per dwelling unit. And I just flipped over and need to go back one. Yeah, okay. Let me just, if I might, 1 minute.
It's moved and seconded the speaker's time be extended 1 minute. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed?
you.
The ayes have it. Mr. Van Aken.
Okay, and just to wrap up, the development agreement, I'm not going to go through again. I think it provides a lot of safeguards and a lot of things that this town and the boards and committees and the neighbors that have been working with us for 30-some meetings need and want. And I urge you to take positive action, first on Article 6, to establish the ability to do this, and secondly, on Article 7, which allows this single site to move ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you. May we have a recommendation from the Finance Committee, particularly with respect to the development agreement? Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. My name is Chris Linsky. I'm the chairman of the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee recommends favorable action on Article 7. Based on the financial analysis that we did, as well as we'd like to recognize the benefits of the development agreement. On the financial analysis, the net impact is favorable when we consider the cluster development compared to other scenarios like single-family houses or mixed-income rental units. As well as we did some sensitivity analysis on additional children, there's still a favorable result, including an increasing in the number of children which the consultant had already recognized would come into potential development. As far as recognizing the benefits of the development agreement, I'd just like to recognize that the payments of the consultant and special legal counsel during the rezoning process, the financial impact analysis that was provided, the limitation of the development, so protecting the town from the impact of what might have been had we not been involving the town's development. The no-cost easement, the water and sewer connection fees, as well as the studies and the $75K contribution towards the sidewalk remedies. Thank you.
Further on the question now, this is the time anybody can ask anything. Paul Collins. Mr. Collins.
Mr. Moderator, Town Boards, Finance Committee, fellow town meeting members, I'd just like to take 2 minutes to say that the Winchester Council on Aging has asked me to present their views on Articles 6 and 7 here tonight. 21% of Winchester residents are 60 years of age or older, and many of us are rapidly approaching that milestone as a baby boomer's age, myself included. The relative lack of suitable housing stock for seniors in town has prompted the council to elevate housing issues as one of its 5 major focus areas over the next 5 years. Currently, as you all know, Winchester seniors in large numbers leave town when the inevitable time comes to scale down their living space. Many of those would prefer to stay if smaller single-floor living spaces were available. The development proposed here for the Pansy Patch and the rezoning needed to make it happen would provide 2 benefits to Winchester seniors in the view of the Council on Aging. First, given the one-floor concept of the units, the space would be suitable for many of our seniors, called in the proposal empty nesters. Secondly, the affordable unit component of the development may present an opportunity for some of our lower-income seniors. Therefore, the Winchester Council on Aging recommends favorable action on both articles tonight, and we ask that you consider voting yes with us. Thank you very much for your courtesy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Collins. Further on the question? Anybody up back? Yes, ma'am. There's a mic up there, please. Yep. We'll bring a mic up to you. Yeah, you can come down. Take your time.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Would you pull that mic down a little towards you? Kleckner does that all the time.
Okay. I'm echoing. I think I can be heard. Judy Miratinello, 82 Salisbury Street. Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, and fellow residents, some of you remember the pansy patch or the old Purcell property where you could buy pansies from a wooden stand that faced Cambridge Street, and where if you were a kid, even the price was right and put a smile on your mom's face of Mother's Day. I remember that particularly because I grew up next door to the pansy patch on Salisbury Street. 20 years ago, I bought the house I grew up in and still live next door to the pansy patch. When Duffy Properties bought this property at auction last April, my neighbors on Salisbury Street, my husband, and I were all concerned about what would happen there and how whatever did happen would affect our dead-end street, our quiet neighborhood, our property values, and our community, including big and little winter ponds that are affected by drainage through that property and the portion of conservation land that it encompasses. Many of us began attending a series of meetings, I think it's 40 or more to date, to address all of our concerns. We attended meetings held by neighbors, by Winter Pond Association, and by town boards, including the Selectmen, Historical Commission, Conservation Commission, and Planning Board. And we also attended meetings arranged by Duffy Properties specifically for neighbors and abutters to afford us the opportunity to address our concerns, ask how the property might be developed, get questions answered, and also have input into whatever the development plan might be. The development plan that the Duffy brothers eventually proposed was an upscale condominium complex with 1.5-story townhouses, in keeping with the architectural flavor with the town and geared to empty nesters who wish to downsize from their large homes, but not lose the ability to keep their 2 cars garaged and have a guest room for visitors or grandchildren. It is a type of housing many of us believe is definitely needed in Winchester. Through meetings with town boards, as well as abutters and neighbors, the Duffy brothers have maintained a continuing dialogue over the past 6 months regarding how to best address this needed housing while respecting the concerns of the town, the surrounding neighbors, and staying within the scope of a development plan that would also be economically feasible to them. The Duffys have listened and have been sensitive to concerns and suggestions from all sides, and have addressed many of the issues that the town and the neighbors have expressed to them since their first proposal was presented. You have heard tonight some of the issues that have been addressed and adjusted through discussion, such as the number of proposed units having been reduced from 57 to 50. Salisbury Street being closed to vehicular traffic other than emergency vehicles, and being only a walking entrance and exit. Garage locations would assure a minimum surface runoff from asphalt driveways through conservation wetlands and into big and little winter ponds. The historic farmhouse will remain on the property, preserving its traditional 1800s agricultural presence as an integral part of the complex. Buffer zone footage will be increased between unit clusters and abutting properties to allow for more privacy between the two and more green space around the perimeter of the complex. Earth and berms, evergreens, and other kinds of shrubbery in that buffer zone would be used to prevent excessive traffic noise and light intrusion into abutting properties. Given these facts, we respectfully request that you vote in favor of Article 6 and 7 so that the town, the neighborhood residents directly impacted by the property, may all continue to have a productive dialogue with the Duffys and have a voice in developing needed housing that can be an asset to us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a speaker right here, but let me name some tellers before I do. We're going to have more speakers. Mr. Leland, Mr. Quill, Mr. Looney, and Mr. Doucette. Would you be my tellers? If you raise your right hands. Do you swear to faithfully perform your duties as tellers to this town meeting? Thank you very much. When the time comes, Mr. Leland, would you count the Finance Committee? And Mr. Doucette, would you count the Selectmen? This gentleman down here was next.
Thank you. Barry Stark, Precinct 6. I think this is a great project, and unlike some others that have been in town over the last couple of years, I think this is a great project at a great time in a right place. And so I support it. I do have a technical question about affordable housing, and that is, I guess 5 units are set aside for affordable housing. Mechanically, how does that work in a condo project? When we sell it at, or it gets sold at below market to somebody, and when they turn around and sell it, is it considered affordable housing unit forever, or does it jump back up into the, regular?
I understand. Let me see if I can answer that for you and ask town council to check me out here. When that happens, what happens is the property has, it's recorded that it's a low-income unit in the registry of deeds. And when the person comes to sell that, the price of that house is indexed so that it goes up in accordance with, say, inflation. And then that house has to be sold at that amount. So if you buy an affordable housing, you cannot buy it at the low rate and sell it at the fair market value of the rate if it was not a affordable unit. Is that correct? And do you know what that index is? Maybe Mr. Servier knows, but I believe it's indexed with the cost of living. Mark? Please. Mark is special counsel for the planning.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The price of the affordable unit is based on a formula. You take 80% of the area median household income for family size, so it's adjustable by family size. And then a window is opened up between 70 and 80%. Otherwise, you'd have only one buyer class at the top of the range. And the price is fixed at 70% of the area median income. You're in the Boston metropolitan statistical area. Assume, for the purposes of discussion, that a family of 4, I think these units would not house a family of 4, but that price is about $88,000. 70% of that is some $24,000 less, and then the price is just undergoes a standard mortgage calculation at that point. You take 30% of the household cost for shelter, deduct that out, what can you afford on that basis? And that rises with time as the HUD index for median statistical income rises over time. The minimum period here under LIP is 30 years. More can be negotiated by the Board of Appeals as a part of the special permit approval process.
Further on the question, there was a gentleman, yes, sir, in the middle there. Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator, Mike Bailey, Precinct 4. 2 questions. I think we heard that the Board of Selectmen approved the development agreement. Has the developer approved the development agreement?
Yes, sir.
And the second question was, does either the zoning overlay and the development agreement, do either of those expressly prohibit the development of rental housing?
Development of what?
Rental housing.
The question was, does the development agreement specifically prohibit the development of rental housing? Mr. Vaughn. Mr. Vaughn is counsel for Mr. Duffy.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen. Mark Vaughn, attorney for the Duffys. The development agreement specifically does say within the agreement that if we do go forward with a cluster development on the property and obtain all permits and approvals for that, we would not have the ability to go forward with a 40B rental development on the property without the Board of Selectmen approving that. So I hope that answers the question.
Further on the question, Ms. Burkhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just a point of housekeeping first. I'd like to withdraw my amendment in light of the new language about the buffer zone. So when we get to that, we can set that aside.
I didn't know that you made one.
The one on the not, remember the word for not? Okay.
No, I thought you just asked if you could do it.
Fine.
I didn't accept it. That's okay.
Couple questions. Paragraph 12 of the development agreement talks about the supplemental tax agreement, sets a number of $315,000 and pegs it to the consumer price index, as I understand this. What about, or was this considered in the event that the consumer price index is less than the proportionate tax increase that everyone else in the town is incurring in their property taxes? In the last 10 or 15 years, there have been a run of years when the CPI was, in some cases, less than 1%, and all of our property taxes have gone up substantially more than that. I would have hoped for language that would have said the greater of, and I'm wondering if that was discussed, and then I have a follow-up.
Mr. Kleckner.
Mr. Moderator, no, I think that there wasn't, quite frankly, a whole lot of attention paid on the supplemental tax agreement. We want to be careful that we pegged the right number in the beginning, and we did ask Judy Barrett, a consultant, to help us define that taxes. I think it's very unlikely that this property would ever be sold to an institution like a church or a university that would continue to use it as is required in the development agreement. So we frankly didn't get too detailed on the mechanism. So we thought that the CPI was good enough in the unlikely event.
Ms. Burkhardt on a follow-up.
Just two comments, Mr. Moderator. It seems to me that we might be in the unusual position for Article 7, and I confine my remarks to Article 7, where the neighborhood is very happy, but there's a question as to whether this really makes sense for the town. I would ask everyone who has driven along Cambridge Street pretty much at any hour of the day, but particularly at rush hour, to think about the traffic backups at those lights at Wildwood and then further down towards the Mystic Lakes. If we add 50 units, one speaker spoke of 2 cars and possible guests, and all of those cars are exiting and entering on Cambridge Street, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that the traffic will stretch from the Star Market to the Winchester Boat Club or beyond. And I wonder about the impact of all of that. I would also suggest that with regard to the Finance Committee's comments as to all of the perhaps add-ons or contributions by the developer, I appreciate the list, but there's nothing extraordinary about that kind of an add-on. There we go. There's nothing extraordinary about having developers pay for certain improvements or escrow funds or consider the impact of their projects. That's what good negotiations are all about. And I'm heartened to see an effort in that regard and a list of items where we have those in this development where we have not in the past, but I don't think it should be held out as something extraordinary. In fact, you could take a look at the numbers and wonder if they could get increased. You could add some categories. With regard to the question from a prior town meeting member just in front of me, I believe the answer was they're not going to go for a 40B, but that I'm not sure was the question. The question was, can these units be rented, just rented by their owners? And I think the answer to that would be yes, though I'm happy to hear further comment. I would suggest with respect to my fellow town meeting members that we may be in a position with Article 7, and again I confine my remarks to Article 7, where the Immaculate Conception property was last spring. And I suggest this property might benefit from additional work and additional study. 50 units is an enormous number of units on that property. The traffic impact is going to be significant. The concept seems to make some sense, but I don't think we're there yet. And I think if we rush ahead here, we do the town a disservice. So I would urge you to vote no on Article 7. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Freisel was next.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just a couple of points, perhaps to clarify in regard to the last speaker. First, the focus on this supplemental tax, I quite agree with the town manager. Highly unlikely we're going to ever see a tax-exempt use this property. And even if a tax-exempt took title to this property, it would be very hard to see how it could be using the property to foster an exempt purpose, which would mean that the town would be entitled to continue to tax it as if it was actually owned by a for-profit entity. So it's hard to see how that supplemental tax agreement's ever going to come into effect. Now to the traffic. If I'm not mistaken, I thought I heard the planning board say that as of right, you could develop probably over 40 units right now. So what we're talking about here is the difference in traffic on the delta, which would be probably about 10 units. That's the difference between what the developer can do right now as of right on that property, as opposed to going along with this development, versus the possibility of seeing a 40B, which could be a lot denser. So it's a question of compromising between those two positions. But if I'm wrong about the 40 plus that could be developed there right now as of right, I would appreciate the planning board to correct me on that.
Further on the question? Yes, ma'am.
Ginny Reader, Precinct 5. I just had a couple questions regarding the empty nester housing. Just some clarifications. I'm really excited about this project. I hope people vote yes.
Can't hear you.
I'm really excited about the project. I hope people vote yes in Articles 6 and 7. I have a couple questions about empty nester housing. Clarifications, I guess. Is this project going to be restricted to only 55 and above, or is it just that the way it's designed is to encourage empty nester housing? And secondly, when they talked about the affordable units being, somebody, I guess Council on Aging was talking about how it would be great that the affordable units would be ideal for meeting the needs of some low-income seniors. I wanted to know if there was any discussion of trying to also restrict the low-income units, the affordable units for seniors. Thank you.
Okay. The question is there any, first two questions, is there any restrictions in this agreement such that low-income or empty nesters have some special rights? That's the first question. And the second, Mr. Vaughn, you want to take that? And then the second question, is there any restrictions on the low income that would allow only elderly folks to live there?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, there is no formal restriction that the development be restricted to 55 and older only. I think that it's being set up in such a fashion with master bedrooms on the first floor, only one additional bedroom, which would be on the second floor, to really target that market. I think that the concern from a financing perspective in today's day and age is that having a strict and formal 55 and over restriction may prove to be somewhat burdensome. That being said, I think that there's a high degree of comfort that that is going to be the target market here, and that we feel very comfortable that that is going to be what this development would be most appealing to. With respect to the 5 affordable units, in terms of who those would be geared towards, really it would be anyone that qualifies. We're more than happy to work with the town of Winchester to have any type of restrictions that they want. I know that in many communities you have local preference criteria in terms of how those 5 units would be marketed, whether that's for residents of the town, relatives of residents of the town, town employees. There's different criteria, and to the extent that the town wanted to gear that towards some of the seniors in town as well, we'd be more than happy to consider that. So,
further on the question, Mr. Wortman, then Mr. Serbier.
Mr. Moderator, thank you. John Wortman from Precinct 1. A question through you to the chairman of the Planning Board. And the question I have is, of the 40% open space that's being preserved here, how much of it is really buildable property? And that is, how much of it is not either resource area, buffer zone that would be protected by the Wetland Protection Act, or spaces where the grades are such that it would not be realistically developable?
Mr. Van Aken.
John, the answer is that we have not computed that, in part because we have only a concept plan in front of us in regard to what the building structures are likely to be. You were shown that earlier, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what the planning board and the developer will end up with. But I'm aware of your concern. There's certainly areas of this particular site that are unbuildable wetlands, and counting them as open space without understanding that they are in that status is sort of cheating. I think that you will find that this has a comfortable amount of open space as defined by conservation, which is a different open space than, in fact, is defined by the planning board. But I can't tell you an exact percentage at this point.
Mr. Wortman, on a follow-up.
Well, I guess my point here is that it's really a misnomer to refer to this project as cluster development. And it's really a misnomer because typically a cluster development is intended that the developer gives up the right to develop certain portions of the property that are otherwise developable. And in exchange, he's allowed to increase the density in a particular area with the objective of preserving open space and still having a reasonable density so that the developer can get an economic return. As I look at this project, what we've done is increase the density for the developer, and I think I'd really appreciate to get an answer to Mr. Freisel's question as to whether 40 units would be developable as right, because I thought it was a much smaller amount. But my problem is that we've effectively given the developer the right to substantially increase the number of units, and at the same time, we've got nothing back with respect to the preservation of open space on this very important piece of property and very environmentally sensitive piece of property. And I'd also ask before the debate's over, Mr. Moderator, that we hear from the Conservation Commission, because we've heard nothing in terms of preservation of Winter Pond and the wetlands area that are part of this site. But it's too much development, and we haven't gotten enough back in terms of preservation of open space, in my view.
Okay, in Mr. Wortman's comments, he asked that Mr. Freisel's comment be clarified by the planning board as to what is the number of houses that could be built as a matter of right. Isn't that the question that you asked, Mr. Freisel? We have an answer to that. Mr. Vaughn. Mr. Van Aken said he thought it was approximately 25. Mr. Vaughn?
Yeah, there's been subdivision plans of anywhere from 23 to 26 single-family homes that could be developed on the property. As that relates to traffic, Mr. Chairman, as I think that was the context it was brought up in, we have had a traffic analysis done which indicates that our project as currently proposed would only generate about 300 trips per day. That's 150 in, 150 out. It represents about less than 1% of the total daily trips that you see on Cambridge and Pond Street today. So I think it's a fistful of sand at the beach in terms of any traffic impact. And I might add that with 25 single-family homes, 4 or 5 bedrooms in each, school kids, being carted back and forth to different events and activities, I think you'd probably see just as much traffic in a development like that as you would with ours, if not more. So, thanks.
Further on the question now, Mr. Wortman also asked to hear a recommendation from the Conservation Commission. Is anyone here from the Conservation? Mr. Parkhurst.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, I think to my knowledge, I'm the only member of the Conservation Commission who is a town meeting member. And I'm also the newest member of the commission. I know that the commission has had hearings on this project prior to my joining it a couple of months ago. The best I could tell you was that any development there would be subject not only to the Town of Winchester wetland bylaw, but the Wetlands Act of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. As I look at the schematic, and we have to keep emphasizing that it is only a schematic and not a final plan, that as an individual member, I believe that the development as generally proposed would be satisfactory. It seems that and there is definitely a wetland there. There's obviously the runoff to on the slope going down to Winter Pond. And it appears that all that would be protected. So if the Conservation Commission has taken a position on it, I'm not aware of it. But as an individual member, I would recommend a favorable action on the articles as proposed. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Serbia was trying to get my attention. The Housing Partnership Board.
John Serbia from the Housing Partnership Board. I'd like to address two of the questions that have come up on the affordable housing on the gentleman over here. Both the 400 Cross Street, Winchester Crossing has a condominium unit similar to what these would be. The Willows has 2 condominium units. The town has placed 5 other condominium units under what's called first-time homebuyer program, which are reserved for income-eligible families. the town has developed the administrative procedures and the legal procedures, and these are permanent on there. And in fact, we've had 2 resales where the prices have carried over. They've been indexed and sold to a new purchaser. I'd also say that we've been working extremely closely with the 3 locally owned banks, the Cooperative Bank, the Savings Bank, and Northmark. Each of those banks provides below market rate mortgages, waives a number of the closing costs on that, and this has been a very successful program. We've also worked very closely with the Department of Housing and Community Development in developing criteria that are aimed both at low-income households and seniors. And one of the things, if you're an empty nester, if you're downsizing, you may be eligible for income, but you have the asset of having sold the house. And so we've developed rules and worked with them to accommodate that provision. So we've worked with the Council on Aging, we've worked with DHCD to have these units be senior eligible as well. Just 2 other brief comments on these articles. They're supported by the Housing Partnership Board. On Article 6, consistent with some other recent zoning changes, in particular the Independent Elderly Overlay District, the affordable housing requirements are included or incorporated directly in the zoning bylaw. Affordable housing is defined as a purpose. It's required as part of the comprehensive plan. It's required as part of the special permit that's approved by the ZBA. We think this is good. In terms of Article 7, the 5 units represent 10% of the units that are being developed. This is consistent with what is known as an inclusionary housing policy, whereby a percentage of any multiple unit development is reserved for either purchase or use by income eligible households. This is the highest priority housing policy that emerged out of the strategic planning process. The Housing Partnership Board has been working with the town manager, the selectmen, the planning board to implement this policy. We're extremely pleased that the Duffys have agreed to provide these 5 units and agreed to following the town's inclusionary housing policy. I'd also point out that the condo fees, any special assessments would be prorated based on the purchase price of the units. So those are also a very helpful step. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you ready for the question, ladies and gentlemen? Way up back. No? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Eve Coffey, Precinct 6.
Can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Is this any better?
Yes.
I'm very impressed by the amount of coordination and the number of meetings that all the parties, and the seeming agreement that the parties involved have. I do want to express some concern about the possible impact on the schools, which on the surface doesn't appear, because the target audience is empty nesters and, empty nesters. But those empty nesters are going to be moving from their homes, which will then leave those homes open for families to move in, potentially having a large impact on the schools, which already has enormous impact, growing enrollment. And I'm wondering if that's something that's been discussed, considered, what the thoughts are on that.
Thank you very much. The lady points out a question and asks whether or not the following has been considered, that if the marketing approach is successful and we get empty nesters from Winchester moving in there, we have the empty nesters houses with more bedrooms, and she points out that this may have an impact on the school. Mrs. Krager.
That may be quite true, but presumably those same seniors are downsizing in any case and otherwise would move out of town. So it'd be a wash.
Are you ready for the question, ladies and gentlemen? Okay. We're going to go back now to motion number 6. And if you remember, we had an amendment pending And that amendment was what we thought was just a minor change, and we got off a little target here, but it's been moved and seconded, this is only a majority vote, that in section 6.5.7, so-called buffer zone requirements, we change the next to the last sentence of the first paragraph to read as follows. Within said buffer zone, surface parking areas, decks, and/or ground-level patios may be constructed, added, where the ZBA deems appropriate, but no principal structure shall be permitted. All those in favor of that technical amendment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Now we come to the main motion, and now just to refresh back to Mr. Van Aken's comment, Article 6 establishes this overlay district which allows this type of cluster development. It does not apply to any place in town until you take a parcel of land and rezone it in there. So this sets up the basis for doing that. So the question comes on the main motion. It's moved and seconded that the Winchester zoning bylaw be amended by revising the following sections with regard to the attached residential cluster development overlay district, ARCDOD. And the motion is several pages long, and it's in your handout starting on page 23, and it ends on page 'What page does that end on? And it refers to, the end of the motion refers to the property, it gives the property description, and by this, with a 2/3 vote, we will adopt that text into our zoning article. All those in favor of that, please rise, and the tellers will count. $31. 29? 29. 39. Say again? 46. All those opposed, please rise. 0. 2. 1. Mr. Quill, did you count? No. You're going to hear about that in the firehouse tomorrow. And I picked them. $145 having voted in the affirmative, 7 in the negative, a total of 152 votes, more than the 2/3 required. The motion 6 passes. Now that we've created the zoning for the town, that it can be used, we have turn to Article 7, and we have a motion before the town, which is which starts on page 3 of the handout, the amended one, and it's moved and seconded to amend the town of Winchester's zoning map by changing the zoning district for the property at 223 to 225 Cambridge Street, consisting of property formerly owned by Ira A. Nagel and currently owned by Duffy Realty, LLC, to an attached residential cluster development overlay district, ARCDOD. These certain parcels of land with the buildings and improvements thereon situated in Winchester in the county of Middlesex and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, bounded and described as follows. And then we have the complete description of the property, and the last paragraph of that ties in the agreement that we just heard about. Said parcels shall be subject to a development agreement between the Winchester Board of Selectmen and Duffy Realty LLC. The Board of Selectmen is authorized to execute an agreement in substantially the same form as approved by the Board of Selectmen on November 13th, 2006. That was approved this evening. All those in favor of that motion, please rise and the tellers will count. $22, $29, $45, $34. All those opposed, please rise. One. 4. 3. 130 having voted in the affirmative, 9 in the negative. The motion is obviously greater than 2/3. The motion passes. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the meeting will be in recess for 10 minutes.
Town meeting is brought to you by Curves Winchester, a 30-minute strength training, cardio, and weight loss center. Join our 12-month CD program today and get the rest of the year free. Now open Sundays. New look, new hours, new you. That's Curves Winchester.
All right, good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our WinCam's coverage of the third meeting of Winchester's Fall Town Meeting, third session here on November 13th. 2 articles considered tonight. Article 6 and Article 7 were considered together. Article 6 was a proposal by the Planning Board to create a new type of zoning, an overlay district in town called an attached residential development overlay district. This was targeted specifically at the so-called Pansy Patch property on Cambridge Street, which was the subject of Article 7. We heard from the Planning Board in proposing it. This would only apply to parcels that are 10 or more acres in town, and we heard that there were only 5 of those left. And it must be rezoned by the town meeting. So again, Article 6 was to create this new district. Peter Van Aken said that this type of zoning allows or encourages quote-unquote empty nester housing. It also allows better public oversight than single-family developments. He said that current zoning proposals in place for properties like this would promote a gated community, such as the Ledges, and not create a neighborhood feeling. He says this zoning, the planning board felt this zoning would encourage open space and a traditional New England landscape, and also provide affordable housing. Because the two articles were intertwined, Bob Duffy, the owner of the property on Cambridge Street and the subject property of Article 7, Article 6 and 7 being considered jointly, spoke next. He said their family company purchased the Purcell property in the last spring. He said they are a family-owned company, and detailed that they had met with many boards and the neighbors in about 40 different meetings. He said that by right, they could put in 23 to 25 single-family homes under current zoning. He said some of the features of the development they're proposing is to have no access from Salisbury Street except for emergency access, and all roads and infrastructure would be privately maintained, not by the town. The development has been capped at 50 units, of which 5 of them will be affordable, approximately $164,000 selling price. The agreement also preserves the farmhouse on the property. Most units are limited to 2 bedrooms. The design has to be reviewed by the planning board. It is subject, to design review by the planning board, and it gives the town the most control over the development. And they also detailed some of the improvements to the surrounding areas, such as sidewalks on Pond Street. Mel Kleckner, the town manager, spoke next. He spoke of the development agreement that has been proposed to be entered into with the developer, Mr. Duffy. He said that development agreement is a condition of the zoning. It binds any owners of the property, even if Duffy's were to sell it to another owner. This agreement would be bound to the deed for the property. He said, Mr. Kleckner said that the town benefits and adds controls and protects the neighborhoods. He detailed the elements of this agreement. Number 1, that there would be reimbursement of the town for its consulting expenses involved in drafting the agreement. Number 2, it sets limits on development, that being the number of units and the number of bedrooms. Number 3, it sets basic design issues such as buffers and setbacks within the development. It allows for affordable housing, in this case 5 units. It allows for historical preservation of the farmhouse that's currently on the property. It allows for municipal easements through the property for drainage, water, and sewer. It conforms with the town's water system, currently looped water system design. It also prepares an infrastructure study on how it's going to affect the town, particularly in school-age enrollments, school-age children enrollments. There was a study on traffic and pedestrian safety, and the agreement provides for $75,000 in improvements to sidewalks in areas abutting the development. And there is a supplemental tax agreement, and that tax agreement means that this property will always be taxed. In the event it's sold to a nonprofit institution or some other non-taxable entity, payments in lieu of tax would have to be made, and again, that's bound to the property. The planning board, obviously, as proponent of the Article 6, proposed favorable action on Article 7. Mr. Van Aken showed some slides detailing potential development of the area, such as a conceptual single-family development, a commercial, mixed commercial and townhouse development, and a 40B rental housing development. The Finance Committee recommended favorable action. They said the net impact is favorable, net financial impact is favorable to the town. Paul Collins from the Winchester Council on Aging said the council strongly supports it and commented on the lack of housing for seniors in town who wish to stay in Winchester but downsize their residence. A Salisbury Street resident rose to speak in favor of the development. She commented on her memories of the Pansy Patch. She said that she had attended about 40 meetings and said that the 1.5-story townhouses are needed in town, and ended with praising for the developer, Mr. Duffy. And we heard some other questions from various town meeting members. We heard from Stephen Parkhurst when asked for a comment from the Conservation Commission. He believed he was the only person who was member of the Conservation Commission who was in the auditorium. He said he was not aware of a formal position by the Conservation Commission, but he felt individually it's generally favorable towards the project. So that's what you have in this first half here, is you've had Article 6 and Article 7. Again, to summarize, Article 6, creating a new type of zoning, this attached residential development overlay district. Once the town meeting approved that, which they did by a vote of 145 to 7, they created this new zoning district, and then Article 7 was to take the property on Cambridge Street and apply this new zoning to that property. And that was also approved by a vote of 130 to 9, far more than the 2/3 that was required. So that's where town meeting stands in this first half of the third session. We've had Articles 6 and 7. We believe Articles 8 and 9 are going to be indefinitely postponed. Those deal with the Hamilton Farm. Haven't heard that announced yet, but we believe that's going to be true. Article 11, to hear and act on the Personnel Board's report, would be next, and then Articles 19, 20, and 21 are housekeeping articles that may be indefinitely postponed as long as there's no budget issues involved in them. So we invite you to stay tuned. Town meeting is in recess, and we'll be back in just a few minutes, and I'll be back with a wrap-up at the end of this session.
ne peut fléchir ces jalouses gardiennes. Oh, laissez-moi conduire mes peines et mon image. Le soleil pour s'étendre, les nuits repassent les jours, sans toi qu'ici, sans m'éprendre, Dieu resterai toujours, toujours. Je le sais, ton âme est douce, l'hiver bientôt viendra, où la main qui
Ladies and gentlemen, it's now 9:25, and let me just give you a summary of what we could accomplish this evening. We really have just 3 articles to go. We have Article 8, which is on the Hamilton farm, and that particular article is going to be indefinitely postponed. My understanding that the speaking time will be about 10-plus minutes, and not starting now, Tom, but shortly. And then we'll do Article 9, and Article 9 is really the primary article from then on, and then we have Article 11, which is probably going to take us, I would guess, no more than 10 or 15 minutes. I'd like to shoot to get out of here by 10:30, which is our normal closing time, and so I would ask you and the speakers to move promptly, and we can get this activity done, although I don't want to rush the deliberations. So we move now to Article 8 to see if the town will enter into a purchase and sale agreement on the Lock Farm. Mr. Howley.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, town meeting members. It will, in fact, be difficult to distill what has been, I suppose, 8 or 9 hours of substantive and I think very highly participatory public meetings and many hours of staff, consultant, board, and citizen volunteer time into 10 minutes, but I'm going to give it a try. And I think it's important to try because while we move for indefinite postponement, this is a matter that we may soon be faced with again. And I think it's important for us, as we're all here together tonight, to try to get up to speed in case you have not been at some of our meetings. So let's begin at the beginning. This summer, Avalon Bay, a major residential developer, requested a meeting with the town manager and informed him and the chairman of the planning board of its interest in purchasing Lock Hamilton Farm, located off Ridge Street, as you know, for the purpose of developing 256 units of rental housing under the state's Affordable Housing Statute, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40B. Since then, the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, the town manager, interested citizens have met 3 times in forums designed to hear each other's ideas and concerns about the issues the town will face, whether or not the town decides to purchase Hamilton Farm. I want to tell you about what we have learned through these public meetings that we have held so far, meetings that I hope those who have attended feel were true community conversations in the best sense of the word. First, we met in early September and began by getting ourselves oriented. We talked about the property. It is, as you can see, this area in pink. It's approximately 20 acres. It's bounded by Ridge Street, High Street Extension, and Pepper Hill Road. Most of it is developable, although there are wetlands and a pond, and there is ledge towards the rear of the property. The agricultural uses that have taken place there lately have been limited to just a few acres. The property contains the Locke family farm homestead, consisting of an 1828 farmhouse and 5 farm-related buildings. As the last working farm in Winchester, as the closest intact working 19th century farm to Boston, and because of the integrity of the historic buildings and their relationship to the landscape, the property has been designated one of Massachusetts' 10 most endangered historic resources. It's also on the National Registry of Historic Places. It truly is a beautiful property. Here are the boundaries again. You can see Ridge Street, High Street Extension coming off over this way, Pepper Hill here. And here's an overview of the property with the farmhouses up front close to the road. Some agricultural use here, pond out towards the middle, and wooded and sort of ledge area in the back. This is the farmhouse that you may or may not have seen if you've been up there picking raspberries. Another one of the historic buildings on the property. Looking back deep into the property here, it really is a very unusual piece of property. Don't look at that slide yet. The property is currently zoned for single-family residential use, allowing 1 home for every 20,000 square feet. It's estimated that if the entire property were developed for this reason, or for this purpose, approximately 35 single-family homes, each sitting on a half acre, could be built as of right under the present zoning. At this first meeting, we described the town's legal rights with regards to the farm. This was our meeting in early September. The owners of the farm applied for and have enjoyed classification of their land as agricultural and horticultural land pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 61A. And under this designation, the property cannot be sold for residential, commercial, or industrial use without the town first being notified of the owner's intent to sell the property, and the town being given 120 days to exercise a right of first refusal to match the offer. The town will then have the same amount of time and contingencies and additional time to actually close on the property as is contained in the offer that it matches. I want to emphasize that no such notice has been received by the town, and in that sense, the clock is not yet ticking. In order to understand the potential cost to the town and its taxpayers of purchasing the farm, we used a range of selling prices that we thought were reasonable, from $5 million to $10 million to $15 million. We informed those at the September meeting that the town does not have sufficient current resources at any of these possible prices to purchase the property and carry the cost for any length of time without borrowing through a debt exclusion override, which must be approved by the voters. And we spoke about estimates of the annual principal and interest costs, assuming a 20-year bond in each instance. You can now look at the slide. At $5 million, our financial advisors projected that the principal and interest would be approximately $378,000 a year for 20 years, resulting in a $54 tax increase on an average assessed home, that average assessed home being $733,000. For a $10 million purchase, the annual carrying cost would be approximately $749,000, resulting in a $107 tax increase on an average assessed home. And at $15 million, the annual carrying cost on a 20-year bond would be $1,124,000 and would result in a $161 annual tax increase for the average homeowner. We also talked about the town's overall fiscal condition and how the cost of acquiring Hamilton Farm ultimately would need to be understood by voters and town officials as part of our overall financial priorities and values as a community. At our next meeting on October 4th, we primarily focused on the fiscal impact on the town of various development scenarios. Specifically, we first asked the landscape architect and site planner that the town has retained to lay out a single-family residential development and a cluster condominium development that preserved the historic structures and used no more than half the land, with the development occurring in the back. Here's what he came up with. And I put these on there not because they represent any real sort of development, but just to give you a sort of a feeling for the instruction that we gave in terms of the use of the land and what we were in turn told might be possible. So that is the single-family home development scenario. And then he also came back with a 70-unit cluster condominium or townhouse-type development. And I stress that we are not considering these proposals. They're not proposals. We're not considering these development alternatives, and that they are very speculative because we have not been able to do any real site investigation work. But they were necessary for us as a starting point for our fiscal impact analysis. So next we asked Judy Barrett, our fiscal impact consultant, to estimate the fiscal impact of the development scenarios that our site planner had said were possible. For many town meeting members and voters, the question of whether a 256-unit rental unit development at Hamilton Farm would be financially negative for the town or not could very well be the key question and the most important issue for them to consider, even more important than preservation. So we need to get, as best we can, our hands around the fiscal impact of these various development scenarios. We asked Judy Barrett, the fiscal impact analyst, to minimize the number of school-aged children that might be, or families with school-aged children might be attracted to this development by limiting the number of three-bedroom units to 10% in the condo townhouse development, and also to do one of these developments at market rate and another condo development scenario, assuming that 10% of the units would be affordable. Judy also did a fiscal impact analysis on a 256-unit rental development project, as was suggested by Avalon Bay. It's very important that we try to understand that. And for that rental development, Ms. Barrett assumed that 25% of the units would be one-bedroom, 60% two-bedroom, and 15% three-bedroom. It is the three-bedroom units that most people will tell you will obviously attract the most children. I will not attempt to break out the detailed assumptions by Ms. Barrett, but I urge you to read her analysis. Her preliminary and supplemental report is posted on the town website. There's also a great deal of other information on the town website. And as we work through the next several weeks and probably another public meeting, she'll be posting a final report that I really urge you to read. But the bottom line, at least in her initial draft of her analysis, concludes that when you look at cumulative expenditures and revenues adjusted for inflation over a 5-year period, the single-family home, mixed-income condominium scenario, and also the all-market rate condominium scenarios are all slightly revenue positive to the town. And the 256 rental unit development is about $125,000 negative over 5 years. That's a cumulative number. So in Ms. Barrett's analysis, the single-family and condo developments are estimated to generate some net revenue for the town, and the 256-unit rental scenario is not materially adverse. Now, having said that, a number of people feel that the fiscal impact analysis significantly understates the number of children, school-aged children, that each of the alternative development scenarios would produce, given the explosion of enrollment we have experienced in Winchester. Some very thoughtful work has been done by town meeting member Roger Haynes, suggesting that the slightly positive or essentially revenue-neutral mid-range estimates in Ms. Barrett's report may not properly consider school-age children data from Avalon Bay projects in Lexington and Newton, and that these projects may indicate that a rental unit development of that size, is that 10 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Talking as fast as I can.
When you're
If I
having
could
fun.
have 5 more minutes, please.
It's moved and second. Speaker's time be extended 5 minutes. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Mr. Haynes' analysis suggests that looking at the data from these other projects, that it could conceivably result in an annual revenue deficit to the town of $600,000. So there's obviously a wide gap between those two estimates. I have to say that Ms. Barrett she's a terrific person to work with. She's very open and very engaged in the whole discussion, is constantly looking for more information to modify and reconsider her results. So we will continue to publicly review and discuss the fiscal impact analysis over the next several weeks. In addition to the sort of better understanding the school-age children projection, Ms. Barrett may also, I think, be re-examining the tax revenue projection in her report. So I want to suggest to you that this is fluid, and if I could sort of give you some insight into her analysis right now, It is not so far that she believes that she is really off in terms of the student projection analysis, but I think thinks that upon further work that she's done at the Pansy Paths, that she needs to look at the tax revenue projection some more. But that conversation is going to continue, and I hope very much that you will be a part of it. And if our first public meeting was to get ourselves oriented about the property and our rights and the broad issues and opportunities we face, the second was to primarily consider the fiscal impact on the town of various development scenarios, the most recent being at our October 25th meeting was to better understand the preservation options. So at our October 25th meeting, we heard from Winchester Hamilton Farm Interest Group, a community organization about the value and vision of preserving open space and agricultural uses. And we had a full preservation on the Community Preservation Act, something we will hear about shortly. And we also heard from the Trust for Public Land. The Trust for Public Land is a nonprofit organization whose purpose, as stated in their mission statement, is to conserve land for people to enjoy as parks, gardens, and natural places, ensuring communities for generations to come. They have considerable experience with these types of projects and trying to preserve them and in dealing directly with owners. What they do is they would acquire the property and then convey it back to the town or some other public entity, and it would be substantially restricted for preservation uses. TPL is now attempting to speak to the owners directly. We have not received an update from them recently as to whether they have been successful. They do not represent the town or bind the town in any way, but we think their experience, in fact, may be helpful, and I think provide certain assurances to the neighbors and other people throughout town who care about preservation that this issue is being fully explored. So where do we go from here? Because we've not been able to speak directly with the owners about a possible direct acquisition, because we have not received notice from the owners that they have entered into a purchase and sale agreement triggering our right of first refusal, we are not able to recommend the town meeting authorize the acquisition of financing of the property at this time. We therefore will move to indefinitely postpone Article 8. But we will continue to work with the Planning Board, our consultants, with the Trust for Public Lands, the town's other boards and commissions, and the community to better understand and refine the town's options with regards to the property. We commit tonight to call a special town meeting if a possible direct purchase takes shape or the town's right of first refusal is triggered, so that town meeting can consider, debate, and decide whether to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire and finance the property. We will call for a special town meeting whether or not the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen is positive or negative regarding the purchase of this property. We believe that the future disposition of this historic property is a matter of great significance to the town and needs to be decided based on a focused and informed public discussion. And in the meantime, we will continue those discussions and expert analysis with the next community meeting being in December. Ultimately, as we said, the voters will decide, because if you as town meeting members should authorize the acquisition, the financing of the property will be determined through a debt exclusion override. That ballot may include 3 significant financial questions: an operating deficit override, a debt exclusion override to acquire Hamilton Farm, and possibly the Community Preservation Act. I'm not sure if this is really sort of the perfect storm of funding questions, but the navigation definitely will be tricky. And you and those of us who serve on your boards and committees, particularly the selectmen, knowing that the financial capacity of our citizens to fund public services and projects is limited, will have to decide if we think not purchasing Hamilton Farm and allowing a major 40B project to proceed will turn out to be materially revenue negative for the town. And if we don't think that it will be, we will have to decide if we think purchasing Hamilton Farm to preserve its historic structures and its open space, we'll have to decide if that could weaken support for additional revenues that may be needed for core services such as teachers, public safety, and DPW personnel. I thank you very much for your attention and for the time you've given me to discuss this with you. Thank you.
Okay, it's moved and seconded that further consideration of Article 8 be indefinitely postponed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Article 9, to see if the town will accept sections 3 to 7 inclusive of Chapter 44B of the general laws. It's moved and seconded, and you have that handout, ladies and gentlemen, under Article 9. And one thing before I read the beginning of the motion, it's a motion to accept Chapter 44B, and in your handout, It calls for a surcharge on real property of 2.5% of the annual real estate tax levy. And the makers of that motion are changing their main motion before they submit it to you so that that reads 1.5% as opposed to 2.5%. So their main motion by Mr. Clemson is to have a surcharge of 1.5% as opposed to 2%. So it's moved and seconded that the town accepts Chapter 3 to 7 inclusive of Chapter 44B of the general laws using 1.5%. Mr. Clemson. Mr. Clemson, as the main proponent, you will have 10 minutes.
I'm not sure. Let me see. I don't know. You give it to Craig? Is that somewhere there? Right here. Just flip this way. I think this gentleman's going to help me. Thank you, Mr. Moderator and town meeting members. My name is John Clemson, and I represent Precinct 3 at town meeting. I have served on the Winchester Historical Commission since 1995. I am an individual proponent asking tonight for your votes to place the Community Preservation Act before a town-wide referendum in the next regularly scheduled town election in March of 2007. I would like to begin the presentation by addressing a few fundamental questions regarding the Community Preservation Act. The first question is, what precisely is the Community Preservation Act? The Act, passed by the Massachusetts legislature in 2000, allows individual cities and towns to raise revenue at the local level through a surcharge on property taxes. The revenue is used to establish a fund dedicated to the purchase and rehabilitation of properties or sites that meet the following three criteria: open space, historic preservation, and affordable housing. Each category requires an allocation of at least 10% of the funds. The remaining 70% can be allocated in any proportion to each of the three categories, as well as be used toward public recreation projects. The Community Preservation Act is a form, or could be described as a form of override. It is a surcharge on property taxes, but with one important difference. Funds raised through the Community Preservation Act may be matched at a rate of 100% by state funds. Allow me to state that again in a different way. Every dollar paid into the fund by taxpayers is doubled by state matching funds. Any project the town undertakes that qualify for the Community Preservation Act funds will be accomplished at half price to the taxpayer. Passing the Community Preservation Act also moves Winchester up in the queue for other state grants. The second question is, why now? The main catalyst for pursuing the Community Preservation Act at this time, and what is viewed as a potentially galvanizing event, is the expected sale of Wright Lock Farm, better known as Hamilton Farm. If the town is presented with its right of first refusal to purchase the farm, having the Community Preservation Act in place as soon as possible might make a real difference in helping the town financially reach this goal. If the Community Preservation Act is not placed on the March 2007 ballot, the next available opportunity for passage will not come up until town elections in spring of 2008. A delay in the passage of the Community Preservation Act could potentially cost the town hundreds of thousands of dollars in matching funds. Also, Community Preservation Act funds cannot be used to supplant or retroactively pay for already begun projects. By failing to act now, the town may miss its opportunity to use Community Preservation Act funds to assist in the purchase of Hamilton Farm if the opportunity arises. Even if Hamilton Farm is handled by means that don't require using the Community Preservation Act,
There are other reasons why the town should consider placing it before the voters now. Passage of the Community Preservation Act will enable the town to continue to take on important acquisition and renovation projects under a broad range of categories that include preserving the town's rich historic character, diversifying its population economically, preserving remaining open space, and improving recreation facilities. It seems reasonable to ask that town meeting recommend that citizens of the town have the opportunity to participate in the decision to pass the act. The most important feature of the Community Preservation Act is that revenue raised at the local level has been matched with 100% state funding every year since passage. Using CPA funds to finance a project like Hamilton Farm can potentially reduce the cost of the purchase to the taxpayer by up to half. Even if the state match is reduced in coming years, even a 50% match could amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars. While the passage of the Community Preservation Act will provide a clear benefit in purchasing Hamilton Farm, it will also create a funding source that will allow the town to pursue other projects in the future. This is something that many agree is an ongoing and pressing need, especially with regard to reaching state-mandated levels of affordable housing availability, preserving what little open land remains in Winchester, and helping to pay for the ongoing maintenance, repair, and rehabilitation of town-owned and other publicly accessible historic buildings. Whether or not the town uses the Community Preservation Act wholly or in part to purchase Hamilton Farm, money raised through the Community Preservation Act can be used for capital improvement projects in many town-owned buildings that would qualify for funding under the historic preservation component of the Act, thereby reducing their cost to the taxpayer by up to half through state matching funds. Future repairs or renovation work to the fire station, Mystic School, Town Hall, Library, Mount Vernon Street Bridge, Lincoln School, and Sanborn House would qualify for Community Preservation Act funds. Addressing humidity and climate control problems in both the library and town hall in order to preserve the town's historic records would be covered by the Community Preservation Act. Community Preservation Act funds could also be used to increase energy efficiency in town-owned historic buildings. Other necessary qualifying projects include outdoor classrooms, bikeways, field irrigation, playing field rehabilitation, and the construction of new playgrounds. Finally, the town's housing fund could be enriched in order to help it reach its affordable housing goals by increasing its inventory. With the state match, affordable housing dollars will be able to go twice as far. Drew Batara will address the economic implications in more depth following my part of the presentation. Passing the Community Preservation Act is a two-step process that consists of obtaining the approval of the local legislative body to place the act before the public at the following townwide election. What we are asking here tonight of town meeting is to place the Community Preservation Act before the voters of Winchester in March of 2007 general election in order to give the broader community the opportunity to decide the issue. We are only asking to allow the voters to decide and not to decide the issue here at this town meeting. Now I would like to explain briefly how the Community Preservation Act funds are spent. The appropriation of CPA funds is decided by town meeting based upon the recommendation of a Community Preservation Act committee. The committee will be constituted through a warrant article in spring 2007 town meeting if the act is passed by the town next March. The committee can be constituted in a manner that suits the town, either by appointment or election, and generally includes members from other relevant boards, including the Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, Conservation Commission, Historical Commission, and Housing Authority. The committee would function much like the Capital Planning Committee. Other features of the Community Preservation Act are as follows. The act can be revoked after 5 years, and the surcharge can be changed at any time in a town-wide election. Community Preservation Act revenue can also be borrowed against further leverage, Community Preservation Act revenue can also be borrowed against to further leverage larger capital outlays. If no immediate need exists for CPA funding, funds can also be banked or saved in anticipation of future projects. Both attributes recommend the Community Preservation Act as a possible Hamilton Farm solution, but it would suggest that the act would need to be passed as soon as possible. Another important question is how much the Community Preservation Act will cost the taxpayers. At a surcharge level of 1.5%, including exemptions, the estimated annual cost to the owner of an average priced house in Winchester, which is currently approximately $731,000, will be $98. Please note that, we changed the percentage, of course. We have elected to include 2 exemptions in the motion. The first exemption is for property owners qualifying for low-income housing and senior property owners qualifying for low and moderate-income housing. The second exemption is a deduction of the first $100,000 in assessed value for the surcharge calculation for all property owners, making the surcharge more progressive than it otherwise would be.
Need more time?
3 minutes, please.
It's moved and second. Speaker's time be extended 3 minutes. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Clemson.
Annual revenue from the CPA surcharge of 1.5% is estimated to be $641,000. With state matching funds, the total annual revenue to the CPA fund is estimated to be $1,282,000. Throughout Massachusetts, 111 communities, about a third of the state, have passed the Community Preservation Act since the law came into effect in 2000. Last Tuesday, another 7 towns adopted the act. Approximately 70% of towns that have considered the act have passed it. Comparable towns that have successfully passed the act include Concord, Lexington, Lincoln, Newton, Wellesley, and North Andover. Lincoln and North Andover passed a 3% surcharge, and several communities have already or intend to raise theirs. In closing, I would like to leave you with several thoughts. Town meeting is being asked tonight to place the Community Preservation Act on the March 2007 ballot to allow all Winchester voters to participate in the decision. Recent town meeting actions, including unanimous passage of several preservation-oriented zoning changes, indicates that it strongly supports preservation values. Adjusting the surcharge rate down to 1.5% is a recognition that the Community Preservation Act, rather than competing with a possible general override, can complement it and also take pressure off the Capital Building Fund. Drew Bottaro will expand on this point. Timing is important. Passing the act as soon as possible will place it in better stead to play a role in finding a solution for Hamilton Farm. The sooner it is passed, the more money can be raised, thereby enlarging the potential for matching funds. If town meeting does not act in this at this session, a whole year may elapse before passage can be contemplated again, resulting in the loss of potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in matching funds. Passing the Community Preservation Act can reduce the cost of Hamilton Farm and other important capital projects by up to half. Finally, the Community Preservation Act represents a long-term investment which allows the town to pursue projects related to open space, historic preservation, and affordable housing that will continue to serve its citizens beyond any single project and into the future. Thank you.
Mr. Bottaro is the second speaker in the last one, right, as a proponent? Yep.
Yes.
Mr. Bottaro.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I don't think I can make up all of those 3 minutes, but I'll try.
Okay.
Thank you, members of town meeting, members of the various boards.
Thanks for coming. Sorry, that was Mr. Clemson's bell. 5 minutes, yeah.
would like you to hear me out on this. As I looked at this act, I've been, I guess, working with the committee proposing this, the group proposing this for about a week, and as I explored it, I saw some significant financial advantages that I thought the town really ought to seriously consider that could help the town in a lot of ways. Where's my, oh, it's right, left click. There we go. Sorry. Okay. And what do I do to move? Just okay. Various votes in this town meeting have indicated that the values behind the Community Preservation Act are something town meeting supports. And if we could get the state match without putting up any money, I know it would pass. Basically, my belief is that the match from the state makes this a fairly urgent thing to do, that we ought to pass this for this coming year. We ought to put this on the ballot in March, and that's what we're asking you to do. And the way I look at it is as follows. There are a number of projects already in the queue, already in the capital planning report, already being discussed that we need to do something about that would be covered by this. And it's not a real stretch to include these to be covered under historic preservation, open space, affordable housing. The whole downtown is an historic district. Anything that the Historic Commission thinks is of historic significance is covered. There is even one town that has included a Veterans Memorial in the coverage here. So there are many things that can be covered here, and my view is that if we just set it at an amount roughly equal to what we think is already in the pipeline, we then get an option on the state match. This is hundreds of thousands of dollars. In retrospect, if we'd known that the Community Preservation Act was going to be funded or matched 100% by the state back when it was passed, we would have been smarter to do that, and we'd have another $3 to $5 million of available funds for projects that we're already doing. And there is an option, of course, if we find that the objectives are overfunded, that we can back off either by vote of this town meeting to put it on the ballot or by a citizen's initiative to do the same. I've heard a number of, I guess, concerns about, well, we're putting too much into a specialized fund. I think there's some legitimate questions about that, but my view is that we can do something about this. If the building fund is too large, we can reduce it by an underride. We can do a paired underride override between the building stabilization fund and the general operating override. But the really big picture is this. There's a match, we're leaving it on the table, and I think we ought to put it on the ballot so the voters can vote for it. I think all these other things are somewhat distractions. They can be worked around. I think between the, I guess, creativity of the Board of Selectmen, for example, a lot of these things can be put forward. Probably in a case of hope triumphing over experience, I do trust that they will pursue those alternatives. Now, I do want to talk about what I call the elephant in the room, because this is the thing that I hear again and again as to why people don't want the voters to be allowed to vote on this. They're afraid it would compete with an override. I've heard it so often I have to acknowledge that it's a legitimate concern. However, I'm just not following it. First, our town's own experience with this is that general overrides put up on their own fail. If you put it up with other things where there's something for everybody, you can get passage. Anecdotally, that's what we've seen when we looked at overrides in the rest of the Commonwealth or in our nearby towns. I think leaving a state match on the table isn't very prudent. It has a tendency to look punitive. I've heard in the same vein, this isn't the right time. Well, it wasn't the right time when I was chair of the Finance Committee and I first raised it. It wasn't the right time a few years later when we were thinking about an override, and then we were thinking about an override, and we're thinking about an override. Now we're thinking about an override, and we're going to be thinking about an override. There would never be a good time to get the state match. I don't know why we don't want to let the voters decide whether we should go for this state match. We were late to the game with the school building assistance program. Excuse me. And I don't see why we should leave this money on the table and let other towns get the match. Finally, I understand conceptually how people might view it as voting for one or the other, but this is small compared to what any general operating override would be. Numbers aren't at all settled, but if they're in the 2 million range, I've heard 1.5 to 3. This is in the 600,000 range. The general operating override is going to pass or fail on its own size. It's 3 times as big as this. This is not, to me, a serious objection for keeping the voters from voting on this. Finally, there's some idea that we could still get it onto the March ballot, and I thought about this a lot. The actual way it would get on, we would have another special town meeting to create a vote on the CPA. Would be a special town meeting called. It'd have to be called around by February 19th. Well, that's winter vacation week, so it's got to be called a little bit earlier, which means it's got to be called 45 days before February 10th, which we're back to December 25th, roughly. I don't think a whole lot's going to happen in the town between Thanksgiving and Christmas that we're going to know anymore. We'd have to call the town meeting, the special town meeting today. So, in summary, I think these are the reasons why I think this is useful for the town financially. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes the presentation by the proponents, and because it's financial, we always ask the Finance Committee on their recommendation. Chris Linsky. Pardon? Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Finance Committee had a tough time with this one. We even reconsidered the motion, hearing that there was going to be reduced to 1.5%. Clearly, the committee likes the idea of proactive planning and funding of conservation, preservation, and affordable housing projects. We like the idea of the matching funds from the state, and the sense of the committee is that this really should be put to the voters. However, there are a lot of risks, and that's really where the committee started to have its troubles with this, and it eventually voted to not recommend favorable action. The state's matching funds are only guaranteed for 1 year, and that's a significant risk. The reason to move forward with this would be to have those funds guaranteed, and the fact that they aren't guaranteed kind of takes a little bit out of the argument. The CPA committee that would be required would introduce another unpredictable management of funds committee within the town. We've already experienced the potential conflict of one committee's recommendation for a source of funds and the priorities for projects. So it would be something that we would have to additionally tackle. The designation as a conservation land, for example, of some of these projects would limit the town's options, the town's control, whereas funding those purchases by the town for these types of lands that become available increases the town's options, as we saw tonight in the development agreement. And then finally, the timing, and Drew has already pointed this out to you, we are going to be asking a rather lot from the voters if we are going to consider any other override situations. So it became clear to our committee that this would be something that would be undesirable at this time in light of the town's financial situation. Thank you.
Further on the question? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Jack Richard for Precinct 1. I got to this town meeting in an unusual way. I was actually a write-in candidate.
Would you get a little closer to the mic, sir? Yeah.
I actually was a write-in candidate who was then voted in by the other members of Precinct 1, and at that time I promised them I'd conduct myself with the modesty appropriate for someone who got a grand total of 5 votes. So I understand that people haven't spoken, and I've not been given a mandate to govern here, but this is something particular I felt I should speak about. My objections to this are both practical and philosophical. I looked at the numbers here, and the nature of the state matching funds is very problematical. The state raises this money through a $20 surcharge on documents that go to the Registry of Deeds, and given the nature of booms and busts lately in the real estate market, those funds have really plummeted. The only numbers I could get from the state was for 2003, they collected $53 million and paid out $24 million, so there was a surplus of $26 million. Only 2 years later, they collected $36 million. It's a big drop. And they paid out $58 million as more towns came to the party. So now they were, as far as 2005 went, they were at negative $22 million. That's almost a $50 million swing in 2 years, and that was 2 years ago. Another aspect of this law. You're being asked to adopt in Chapter 44B. Chapter 44B, Section 5, expands the eminent domain power of the state and gives it to this CPA board. They have the right to suggest that certain properties, for historical value alone, yes, they do. They have the right to make this suggestion, and with the approval of this town meeting, 2/3 of the town meeting it takes, but that property could be taken for eminent domain. I, for one, do not want to own my property, with all due respect to this group, I don't want to own my property at the pleasure of this group. And this is my philosophical objection. And it relates to the nature of historical preservation generally. I think it's a noble goal, but it competes with other imperatives. And I think part of budgeting and taxing is separating wants from needs and separating preferences from imperatives. And we all would like to preserve some of these beautiful historical structures. Most of them are private property. And my idea of history is what we were left by our generations before us is more than just the bricks and the boards and the roofs and windows. We were left freedom by these people, and we were left a great deal of freedom by them. And this beautiful town that we were left was for the most part built when there were no zoning laws whatsoever. And they exercised their freedom in a very responsible way, and I don't know why we don't trust each other to do the same a little bit more. The lasting legacy that we were left, I think, in the heritage that we've been left by our forefathers is not summed up in buildings and shacks and barns and things like that. It's the freedom we've all left each other to do as we please with our own private property. That's a sacred thing, and that freedom was not easily won. It was very hard won. And history has told us that if we give it away, and chip it away, and let it get frittered away for short-term, in this case, an expediency that we think we might get a little bit more money, my freedom's not for sale. I would hope the rest of you feel the same way. And as it's given away, it's very, very hard, sometimes impossible, to get it back. So I think we owe it to our children. You know, history is not just about yesterday. We're making history today for our children and their children. And what we do for them is what history is also. So, you know, I think the people that come after us, we owe them to leave them no less freedom than we were left by the people who came before us. So for both those practical reasons, you know, and philosophical reasons, I would oppose this. And just 2 points that came up, which I thought were need to be addressed. One of the slides said, if it turns out we collect these millions of dollars and we find we don't have anything we need to spend it on, well, of course, we can just bank it. Now, do we really believe that there'll be $1 million or so left around in some account and they won't find a way to spend it? Particularly where we've heard that the discretion is very wide-ranging, can rove all around, and basically anything the commission says so could be historical. I think it's pretty fair to assume that money will get spent. And secondly, the point was made that if we find out this tax is too high, we can always reduce it. You know, I don't think that's very likely to happen either. I think, I've been here a short time, and you folks might know, you certainly have a better historical memory than I do, but it seems to me I haven't heard much argument about we have extra money laying around and taxes could be reduced because we have this large bank account with all those funds in it. So again, I think for both practical, historical reasons, I would urge that the town meeting does not pass it, because we're not being asked just to pass this on to the people. We're being asked to endorse it. So you do have a responsibility as town meeting members, not just to pass through and give it off to a vote. You're asked, the question in front of you is, do you endorse this proposal, not do you pass it on to the people? Thanks very much, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, sir. Lady Rep back was trying to get my attention. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you.
I'm Susan Humans. I'm a member of the Winchester Hamilton Farm Interest Group, but that's not the hat I'm wearing. Looking at the proposed alternative uses for the land at Hamilton Farm demonstrated how important and how multifaceted all the projects are which the Community Preservation Act is designed to be able to support. And there are two principal points I'm going to make. One is just plain the efficiency of this. The statute requires that 10% each year gets spent on each of the three required kinds of uses. That and the rest, it's discretionary to the committee, but to the town then to the town meeting that votes up or down on any of those recommendations. The rest can be spent in a chunk. So you are assured that the small expenses that are part of maintaining infrastructure in any of these individual areas, you can be sure that those small expenses are going along while major capital projects are also happening. Second, there's a process created for considering and planning for those needs. You can be sure that the amounts of money that are reserved for the next year are going to have to be reserved according to a plan. Part of what this whole process involves is another plan, but a plan for how the various kinds of community needs that are covered by this money are going to be handled over a period of time. So I think that, well, and that efficiency spills down to the second point that I'm going to make, which is a democracy point. And it's that this CPA does not impress everyone in the abstract, but it really pretty reliably does impress people when they learn more about it. I've watched as officials in this town scan a list of the projects that have been funded across the state in recreation and in housing. And I've seen them kind of nod their head and get this understanding of all the nitty-gritty stuff that has to get accomplished, that can get accomplished with this money. And let me give you just a couple examples. In Acton, $250,000 to create a new multi-use recreation space at Leary Field. In Bedford, $4,100 for a trail improvement program. In Bedford again, $250,000 for additional funding for the Concord Road Affordable Housing Project, and $25,000 to hire a part-time housing consultant. We can, well, for your interest, we can get you access to all those lists. You can get to those lists from the Community Preservation Act website, but they're a joy to behold in terms of all the different ways that the work of a community is getting done, is rolling along forward. And that gets to the final democracy point that I want to make. Historic preservation and maintaining open space and providing alternative affordable housing and all the ways that can be accomplished. It was passed out, and some of you have copies of a sheet that the State Department of the Treasury prepared a document on the Community Preservation Act financing issues for a meeting in October of 05. And it lays out in some detail how many things can get covered by this money. But those needs, writ large as they are needs not any one of them is going to have widespread community support, but altogether they represent strong interests of many of the town's residents. These are the character things that we all end up saying matter to us when budget issues arise and when changes in the nature of the town. When those questions arise, these are the kinds of things for which there are small, really strongly interested constituencies. And I think the bottom line here is that those constituencies need to get a chance to vote for this thing. So I say that you need to vote to enable people to learn about this very important tool, and you need to vote to give all the town's residents the opportunity to decide what to do about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Berman was next, and then Mr. Conti, and the gentleman, Mr. Natali, up back, then Ms. Meister.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Town meeting members, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, first of all, we think this has been a very useful presentation, bringing this forward, having this debate. However, the Selectmen have voted unanimously to recommend that we indefinitely postpone this article, and let me tell you why. We've had a number of discussions about the CPA at various meetings over the last 2 months, and I would describe these discussions is failing to reach a consensus on supporting the CPA. First, at a set percentage rate, we don't have a consensus. and second, at a time to bring it forward to the voters. We don't have a consensus. Concern as to the amount of funds to raise, as to the tolerance of the community for additional taxation. Second, as Chairman Howley stated in his prior remarks regarding Hamilton Farm, we have a shared concern for the timing of this vote. And let me be more specific. We have only just begun a detailed budget review for FY08. We have listened to Dr. Marini describe the exploding school enrollments that hit us again this past September with over 100 new students in schools that are already physically maxed out. We know too well about our escalating energy costs. Our health benefits for our employees continue to skyrocket past our nominal growth rate of our revenues. At a minimum, early estimates of an FY08 deficit are in excess of $2 million. And they confront this board and they confront all of us here as town meeting members and the voters. If we do decide to place a general operating override on the ballot, and that question has not been voted as yet, it will need to be presented to the voters on the same March 08 ballot that the proponents are looking towards. In addition, we may be faced with the need to place a debt exclusion override on the ballot for Hamilton Farm should a purchase and sale be delivered to the town. If we were to decide that, we might have to have a special town meeting. As you've heard in the prior presentation, that is in accordance with 61A and when something may come forward. So that's looming out there. Chairman Howley described as a perfect storm. That's how the board is viewing it. Therefore, we have a concern that the perfect may crowd out the possible if on the ballot with other override requests, the CPA were also to appear. And so regardless of the somewhat of a consensus on the CPA in concept, there's a 5-0 vote that we've had that says we can't do it right now for the reasons I've listed, so we would request you consider indefinite postponement. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conti was next, and then the gentleman, I think it's Mr. Natale up back, and then Ms. Meister. Mr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I hate to gild the lily and reiterate some of the points that were made by the previous speaker, but frankly, I think this is bad fiscal policy. I don't think it's wise for the town to dedicate a particular source of revenue to only 3 purposes, which would defeat the objective, what I believe is to be sound fiscal policy, to allow the town meeting and Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee to decide what the town's priorities are at a given time. What this proposal will do would to take a portion of our potential revenue, our revenue potential, and let me remind you that our revenue potential is not unlimited. You can only go to the voters so many times to ask them to support increasing their taxes. What this would do would eliminate a portion of our revenue potential and limit it only to using it for the 3 particular purposes that have been identified by the proponents. In my mind, the priorities for this town are schools, police, and fire. Those are the top priorities for the town. Not to say that other purposes are unimportant, but the town ought to be able to devote its limited revenue potential to those uses which are the most important priorities, and not have a portion of its revenue potential segregated off and that can only be used for these particular purposes. I would also like to reiterate the point that was made by a previous speaker about the fact that these revenues, the allure of matching funds from the Commonwealth, you know, we've heard that many times in the past, that the Commonwealth is going to pay money, and therefore, you know, it's not going to cost the town anything, or it's going to cost the town less because we'll get money from the state or we'll get money from the federal government. Well, we've all heard, you know, we know about the problem with special education, which is a priority activity. Does the Commonwealth fully fund special education? No, it does not. And we're currently going into a period where we're told that the real estate boom that we've been had for the past several years is on the decline. There'll be less money, as a previous speaker pointed out to you, going into the fund that supports this program. And as more and more, just to finish up, as more and more towns adopt this proposal, there'll be greater demands on the fund and much less likely that the fund will be fully funded. So I ask that we vote no and remove this impediment to sound fiscal policy. Thank you.
Mr. Natale. You have a microphone up there for the gentleman? There you go.
First, Mr. Moderator, I have a question for you. What is the difference between permanent postponement and voting this down tonight if the body should vote it down?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
The question for those that may not have heard it is the gentleman asked, what is the difference between indefinite postponement and simply voting it down? Right now, we do not have a motion for indefinite postponement. Mr. Berman suggested that's what the selectmen wanted, but they failed to make that recommendation. Quite frankly, there's no difference at all in this particular article. A no vote on this kills it. A motion for indefinite postponement that passes kills it as well, unlike a zoning article which has ramifications maybe.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Well, I'm comforted somewhat by the fact that the finance
Would you
committee...
move the microphone just a little bit away from your
Yes.
mouth and we can hear you better?
Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, great.
Okay. I'm comforted somewhat by the fact that the finance committee unanimously opposes this article. I also myself unanimously oppose it.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yes.
That would be troubling if it was half and half.
In part because it is an override, you know, a duck by any other name, a rose by any other name. It is an override. It's a permanent, voluntary supplement to our property taxes that will never, ever go away, and it will never decrease. They say in one of their handouts that the cost is minimal. It's only a cup of coffee a week or so. I assume that's a large cup at Starbucks. And that's this year. Next year, it's going to be coffee and breakfast. And a couple of years after that, it's probably going to be coffee and dinner for two. It's a tax that's just never going to go away. It's a very aggressive gradualism. It's more than a foot in the door. So I'm opposed to it because of reasons of property taxes. Also, the first speaker raised the specter of that some properties could be taken, which frightens me, that the commission would have the power, the authority to take private property. And finally, one of the things they want to do is buy open space. To my mind, we have basically Yosemite over there at the Fells, and why do we need any open space anywhere? I don't get it. So I urge the defeat of this article.
Mrs. Meister was next. Then I'm sensing we're ready for the question.
The planning board did vote 5-0 in support of this warrant article. There were the general reasons that that you heard from the proponents, that the state matching funds have been coming in since the Community Preservation Act was enacted at 100%. That is to say that this town has been leaving money on the table, money that other communities have been taking from the state and have been supporting projects with this money when we've been paying full freight. This money supports capital projects that have long-term benefits, benefits that the planning board recognizes. Projects, so far we've been funding town hall work that we've just done, the work on the library that you've probably noticed. This town meeting did vote for some money that got for stabilization of the Sanborn House. All of this has been paid for at 100%. We could have been paying for it at 50 cents for the dollar of work. But even going forward, you all have this capital planning committee report with projects that are scheduled far out into the future, and there are a number of projects on that could be funded with Community Preservation Act money. This includes restoration of the playfields. It includes work that's coming up on the public safety building, as well as a possible Hamilton farm. There is, in addition to this, though, a planning board perspective. More generally, these are long-term quality of life projects that can be funded relating to open space, recreation, emphasize recreation, that is to say our play fields, as well as preservation and affordable housing. These are goals that have been identified with our Envision Winchester work and that clearly are supported town-wide. I should add, when the Community Preservation Act can be rescinded, when it went to vote this past November election in Hingham, it was supported overwhelmingly by the residents in Hingham by more than 70% of the voters. Again, more than a third of the communities now in Massachusetts have adopted the Community Preservation Act, and it has a good track record of showing how that communities are very satisfied with it. In addition, there's a narrower planning board perspective on CPA money. If the town were to pass the Community Preservation Act, the town of Winchester then would qualify for a number of planning grants. These are real money. This is real money that does support planning work that other towns, such as our neighbors in Lexington, are able to get, and we just don't get it. Also, CPA money is, or passage of the Community Preservation Act is something that the state monitors, the state awards points, the state gives scores to communities for a variety of things, and passing CPA is one of them. And then the state then attaches money that goes back to the towns for their progress in these various areas. Passing CPA gets a high number of points. This is not just planning grants. This is stuff like PWED money that pays for your streets. We've been trying to get a grant for North Main Street for quite a while. So there are a lot of additional benefits to passing CPA beyond the 100% matching money, which is not a small thing. Why now? Certainly the Community Preservation Act has energized a number of people. People who are interested in Hamilton Farm would be interested in seeing that this go forward. And in terms of timing, it should be emphasized that it can only be put on the ballot this coming March, and if it doesn't go on the ballot this March, it's going to be another year, 2008, before we can vote on it. We think that with a third of the communities in Massachusetts having adopted the CPA, we believe the program is well tested and its benefits widely appreciated. We believe the time has come for Winchester to take advantage of the state funding. The planning board asks that you vote yes on this. And I want to add one more question, and I'll just direct it to you. I did attend the Board of Selectmen's meeting before town meeting, and there was a sense of the board of how they would feel if it were a lower amount. And I'm wondering about amending it on the floor.
Well, amending what?
The main motion to reduce the amount for the CPA, which would be the vote that would go next March.
Well, you mean the 2.5%?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
well, it came down to 1.5%.
It came down to 1.5%, yes.
Yes.
And what's your question? Do you want to lower it now?
Mm-hmm.
And what would you like to lower it to?
I want to direct this to the Board of Selectmen, but I understood that that 3 people on that board did say they would endorse it at 0.5%. It's a very small percent.
How much?
0.5 was that?
40.
That's what I observed.
Excuse me, Mr. Howley, do you want to tell us what your price is? Yes.
We did not take a vote on this. The vote was as described by Mr. Berman. There was discussion at the table, and the individual selectmen expressed a variety of opinions, none of which came to a vote. There were 2 people who expressed the opinion that 0.5% might be not a bad idea, could get on the ballot, and that the amount of money would not create perhaps the kind of problem that the board otherwise feels could be created by asking too much of the voters. There was also one board member who expressed that he might go as high as 1%. We did not take any vote on that and would expect to vote individually if a motion like that were made.
Mrs. Beister.
But I just want to clarify that my understanding was that 3 people would find that 0.5% could be.
Do you want to make a motion to amend?
Make a motion to amend for, is 0.5, that's acceptable? That's the minimum the state will accept?
Right.
Yeah.
It's moved. Is that seconded? Okay, it's moved and seconded that the percentage be decreased from 1.5% to 0.5%. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. I'd say the noes have it. Okay, the question comes on the main motion unamended. It's moved and seconded that the town hereby accepts Section 3 to 7 inclusive, Chapter 44B of the General Laws, otherwise known as the Massachusetts Community Preservation Act. Majority vote required. All those in favor of accepting that act, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. I'd say the no has it. The necessary number of people haven't risen. All those in favor, please rise and the tellers will count. $15, $21, $15, he's definitely going to hear from me. Mr. Leland, would you count that section, the left-hand section? Yeah, this section, sit down, the right-hand section. Mr. Clemson? Pardon? Right up the middle where you are, sir, right in the middle. Yes. Now, wait a minute, okay. Well, we'll count both here. Just this side. Everybody move over that's standing, please, so we can count. Mr. Leland, would you count that side? And Mr. Looney, I'm going to ask you to count your side when the time comes up again. No, they're counted. They're counted. Okay. And what was your number before, Mr. Looney? 21. Yeah, would you count yours with this section, please rise? Yep. How much? 17. A couple of double counters there. Okay, all those opposed, please rise. And Mr. Moore, could you count your section, please? You'll be. $13. 24. 8. 16. 66 having voted in the affirmative, 61 in the negative, the motion passes. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the confusion, and that gentleman's name is Quill. Former town meeting member. We turn now to I guess I'm out of here. I heard that once this week. Ladies and gentlemen, we got Article 11 coming up here. And Article 11, I assure you, should take no more than 10 minutes, and I'd appreciate it if you could hang in. Mr. Joyce, head of the Personnel Board, and he has 4 motions. You have them in your handout for Article 11. And I asked Jim Marini, you want to come down to save some time, or is he going to do it? Okay.
Okay. All set?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, members of the Board of Selectmen, town meeting members. The Personnel Board presents to you 4 motions this evening. 2 relate to the school department employees, and 2 relate to the town employees, the managerial and non-bargaining unit sector of the town employment population. Motion number 1 seeks to amend the town compensation plan to reflect the settlement reached in collective bargaining negotiations this June with the Winchester Educational Association representing the teachers and a smaller unit representing the teacher assistants. Motion number 2 seeks to transfer $470,000 in funds already appropriated by town meeting last spring from an unallocated personal services account to the educational account to fund fiscal year '07, the first year of the collective bargaining agreement. Motion number 3 seeks to amend the town compensation schedule to reflect an increase for the wages for managerial and non-bargaining unit personnel on the town side. And motion number 4 seeks to transfer funds in the amount of $75,568 in previously appropriated funds for fiscal year '07 to meet the funding requirements for the raises that the town manager, unanimously approved by the Board of Selectmen, has recommended. So let's talk about the contract, and I'll do this quickly. It's been a long night. The contract settlement reached with the teachers, we believe, at the Personnel Board, is a very fair contract, fair to the teachers and fair to the town, especially in this era of fiscal restraint. And we commend the chairman of the school committee, Mr. O'Connor, the other members of the school committee, and Superintendent Marini and the bargaining team for some very hard and difficult, but what we believe to be successful contract negotiations. Why do we say that? They started out with 4 objectives. The first was to bring health insurance in line with the historical achievement of the bargaining committees that the town bargaining resulted in for the police superior officers and other town units, where for the first time in the history of the town bargaining, an increase in premium contributions by the employees was achieved. And in this contract, the school committee has been similarly successful in achieving that objective of bringing the teacher's contract in line with the town on this particular subject. The second objective was to bring the raises in line with the revenue growth of the town, projected to be 4.5%. And by the raises, I mean the fully loaded costs of the contract. That has been a subject of controversy, as many of you know. Over the years, the Personnel Board has sought and received the cooperation from the school committee to evaluate the all-in costs of any raise. And in this particular contract settlement, that number is, in the first year, fiscal '07, 4.2%, 4.6% if you don't take the the reduction caused by retirement in the system. But in any event, this was a contract negotiation where everyone in with eyes wide open, fully understanding the roll-up costs, and that information was shared with the Personnel Board and anyone else who requested it. Mr. O'Connor made himself available to explain that they had crunched those numbers and provided access to me and my board through Mr. Rippon with all sorts of data, so that we knew exactly what the roll-up costs were. The third objective that was expressed in the negotiations, according to the school, was to bring the settlement in within a range of settlements that with comparator towns that they felt reasonable, and they have done that as well. So with this and other benchmarks measured against the results of this contract, we believe that the contract that they have agreed to, which is a 2% wage increase in the first year, 2.75 in the second, 2.75 in the third, is a fair contract, and we recommend that the monies that were allocated for the funding of the first year of this contract at 2% be transferred to the educational fund to do just that. And so the first motion would amend the compensation schedule to reflect these raises. The second would transfer those funds. Now, motion number 3, as I mentioned, relates to managerial and non-bargaining unit personnel. This is reflective of the town manager's desire for purposes of equity and good human resources practice to grant the same 2% wage increase for managerial and non-bargaining unit employees that was achieved in the contract negotiations with the teachers. The funding of that will be in accordance with monies that were in part already allocated at last town meeting, and the delta between what the cost would be, some $90,375 versus what was transferred, $75,568, will be made up from salary appropriations where vacancies exist in other departments, and hiring freeze that is in place by the town manager. So the motion number 3 would amend the compensation schedule for those individuals to reflect a 2% increase, and motion number 4 would transfer those funds. Personnel Board recommends unanimous approval on all 4 motions. Thank you very much.
Okay, we hear from the Finance Committee. Why don't you sit right down front here, Bob, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Finance Committee has a recommendation for this article, but also some comments. Our recommendation is favorable action on the transfer of the funds. We did want to point out, and the previous speaker has mentioned, that the contracts that were settled for greater than the amounts that was to be transferred, but they've assured us that they'll cover those overruns in their operating budgets. But we do want to take this time to mention that we do continue to settle contracts for greater than the amounts that we're taking in for forecasted revenue. We can't count on historic revenues to pay for the contracts in the future. The historic revenues included overrides, and they also included the use of reserves, which the town no longer has, so we won't have enough money to fund these contracts come 2008. We also want to point out that our inability to control these spending growths are the reasons why we can't afford some of the things that we talk about in the warrant articles, for example, in this fall town meeting. So we have to do a better job controlling these contract costs going forward. Thank you.
God bless. Thank you very much. Further on the question, let me take these one at a time. The first motion is a motion to approve the compensation plan. Historically, in Winchester's town meeting, we changed the compensation plan, which is a schedule for how much everybody makes. And with respect to the school department is not required to get our approval for collective bargaining agreements under state law. But historically, they have made full disclosure, and the town meeting, in its wisdom, could decide not to, they can't decide not to approve them, but they could decide not to give them any additional money. And so that it was hammered out many years ago, and we continue to do that. So the first motion, as Mr. Joy said, just essentially documents the financial changes that were negotiated. So it's moved and seconded that the compensation plan be amended in accordance with the agreements. That's motion number 1. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Now, the second motion is for the town to transfer $470,000 from a reserve account that was set up at the annual town meeting. And if you remember back at the annual town meeting, the school committee had a budget that was X, and there was modifications made in the town meeting to that budget, but the school committee was asked to transfer a portion of the money that would be for collective bargaining purposes into a reserve account. The reason that's done is that because of the state law, if we left it in the school budget, they could have spent it for other purposes other than collective bargaining. So we move that out into the reserve account, and on the municipal side, they move out an amount to try to cover their collective bargaining. So the amount that was moved over was 2% of their total budget, which was $470,000. That's where the number came from. The money's in there. The agreement's now settled, and this motion simply moves it back into the school committee's budget. So it's moved and seconded that the town transfer $470,000 from account 1241, unallocated personal services, to account 3110, in accordance with the detailed motion. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carry. Motion number 3, same thing, only the municipal side. Mr. Moore.
I have a question regarding 5 on motion number 3.
On motion 3?
Yes.
Okay.
Relating to Schedule 5, the election officials, wardens, clerks, and inspectors. And the question is, since we've had 2 elections before this has been passed, will these raises be retroactive for the election last week and for the primary in September.
Yes, they will be. I've been advised by the comptroller. Is that correct? Yes. And do you want that check sent right to your house? Oh, for you and your wife. No conflict there. He's my former law partner, so it's okay. Okay, it's moved and seconded that the compensation plan be amended in accordance with the recommendations of the Personnel Board for compensation to employees who are not members of a formal organized collective bargaining unit as set forth in Appendix B. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. And then there's a motion that was a handout, which is motion 4, and it's moved and seconded that the town transfer $75,568 from account 1241 unallocated personal services to various 2007 municipal accounts for the purpose of funding wage adjustments for employees who are not members of a formal organized collective bargaining unit. And that $75,000 is broken down by account in the handout. And the question comes on that revised motion 4. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to Article... Yes, sir.
Can I make a motion to reconsider Article 9?
Article 9.
CPA.
Okay. Mr. Haley makes a motion to reconsider Article 9, which is the CPA. Is that seconded? You can't vote no. I know it's late, but now let me explain what the rules are, ladies and gentlemen. That motion is a motion that's in order at all times in a town meeting, and the rules under the bylaws of the town of Winchester, it becomes the first order of business at the next session, or it becomes the last order of business in this session. And so right now, it would appear that it'll be the last order of business in this session. And we turn now to Article 19. There's no debate on that motion until I take care of the other 3 articles. A motion to reconsider is not debatable. No questions until it comes up.
Make a motion to adjourn.
It's a motion to adjourn is, this is getting interesting. This is what gets my blood going. It's moved, is that seconded? Okay, it's moved and seconded that the meeting be adjourned. If we were to adjourn, we'd obviously have to come back on Monday. The only other things that we have left to do, other than reconsideration, Thursday, I'm sorry, is Articles 19, 20, and 21, all of which are going to be indefinitely postponed. So the motion to adjourn comes now. That's a motion that's in order at any time if it has a second. Yes, Mr. Mortensen. The question is the motion to adjourn debatable? A little quiz here. A motion to adjourn to a fixed time or recess is not debatable in this town meeting. So, I beg your pardon? No, it's not allowable. The gentleman has made a motion to adjourn, and that is not debatable. Okay, so the question comes on the motion to adjourn. Those who want to adjourn would vote yes. Those who want to stay and hear the debate would vote no. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. I would say the noes have it. And so we turn now to Article 19. And it's moved and seconded that Article 19, 20, and 21 be indefinitely postponed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Marini, Dr. Marini, you don't have to leave. You can hang around. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Here we are. It's Article 9, and this is a motion to reconsider recent acceptance of the Massachusetts Community Preservation Act. Now, the rules of reconsideration, for those that haven't been through it, in the Winchester Town Meeting, a motion to reconsider can be made by anybody before someone asks me the question. It doesn't have to be someone that was on the prevailing side, like Robert's rules. That's a difference in town meeting. So the motion's in order. During the debate, the full merits of the article under consideration are up for grabs. You can talk about it in its entirety. We're not limited to anything. So the chair at this time would recognize the maker of that motion, Mr. Haley.
Mr. Moderator, I raise a point of order, and that's whether or not the town meeting currently has a quorum.
I would think that they do, but if you would like, I will count.
Please.
Okay, would the tellers please count? Everybody can stay. Everybody who is a town meeting member, please rise. And while we're doing it, let's look at anybody down front who's sitting and get them out of here. No, you're all right. Three zero. 28. 36. 23. Please be seated. 117 votes present. We need a quorum is 100. The chair recognizes the maker of that motion, Mr. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I rise to urge a reconsideration of Article 9, not because I stand in opposition to the preservation of community assets, historic buildings, playfields, or open space, but because I speak for the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee who were united in their opposition to this article, and I think for reasons which are evident to those who work on the issues of town finances every week, every Monday, every Tuesday, every Thursday. What is evident to those of us who are in those positions and struggle with those issues is that the town of Winchester finds itself in a position in November of 2006 much different than many other communities which have passed the Community Preservation Act. In the first and most important instance, in our community today, we hold over $7 million in funds which we have collected through the override we previously passed, which created separate stabilization funds for capital and for building, into which each year we place $1.8 million from buildings and $800,000 from capital. We raise those monies not through our ordinary tax levy, but through the effects of an override, which had much the same effect as a Community Preservation Act, albeit, perhaps regrettably, without the state match. However, we are already setting aside significant amounts of cash. We are, in fact, cash-rich today. When anyone from outside looks at our balance sheet, their first response to us is, "You're holding $10 million of cash. What do you mean you have problems?" And our immediate response is, we're holding that cash in trust for use with respect to building and capital items. Now we are faced with the advent of a very new request, and that is, in addition to the overrides that we already have in place, setting aside already substantial amounts of money, let us go to the voters again and ask for an additional sum of money. My concern is that were the voters to consider that and to vote on it and to pass it, we will be then adding another $650,000 a year to these already substantial funds. We will use those funds. We will use them in the ways mandated by the Community Preservation Act, because once we have the money, it has to be used. Nobody is not going to use those amounts. But those monies, regardless of the match, are not free monies. They're monies that we're taking from the pockets of taxpayers. The taxpayers only have a limited ability to give. I believe this taxes their ability to give beyond what is reasonable or necessary and is duplicative of the funds that we already have in place. Our needs are not the accumulation of funds
to be administered by a community preservation board on things such as historic buildings, open spaces. However great, however urgent, and however important those things are, those are not the needs of the community of Winchester tonight, and they will not be the needs of the community of Winchester in 2007. Those of us who study those needs, the four gentlemen that I sit with and the members of the Finance Committee, are unanimous in their belief that now is not the time for this issue, that this issue is contrary to what is in the best interests of the community, and it does not make sense for the voters to endorse it. It confuses an already confusing financial situation. If successful, it makes nothing better. It makes many things worse. For those reasons, I would urge you to vote for reconsideration of the article and then to reject the article.
Thank you. Mr. Mortensen.
Mr. Moderator, and fellow town meeting members, with great respect to the prior speaker and the other members of the elected boards and appointed boards here, I think I, for one, have heard enough for one season of someone telling me we don't understand. The suggestion here has been made that they have all been working hard on it and understand it better than we. And I submit that that is not a persuasive argument, nor one which is worthy of this meeting. When I was a young town meeting member here, there came a time when the federal government mandated that the town have curb cuts downtown so that people in wheelchairs and others could get off the curb. There was no choice. We had to do it. The state said, we will pay for all of it. The motion came to town meeting to adopt that, and the town meeting, to my amazement, wouldn't do it. Why? Because no one could tell us how to spend that money and how to do the curb cuts, and we know better how to do curb cuts. And so we turned down the state money, to my absolute astonishment. I've never forgotten it, because tonight we find ourselves in a situation where we are all well aware of a long list of capital improvements which are in the pipeline and which this town meeting will eventually approve in due course. The capital report is before us. We've looked at it earlier in this meeting. We're going to face those expenses anyway. So why would we turn down an opportunity for matching funds? In terms of fiscal responsibility, it is not an argument, as the prior speaker has just suggested, to suggest these are all for do-gooder causes. The list of undertakings for which other towns have been able to take advantage of these matching funds is broad and long and encompasses the kinds of capital projects we are going to invest in anyway. I think we, as town meeting members, are sent here to be smart and prudent with the taxpayers' money. And if one way to get 100% matching funds is to adopt this law, then I think the voters ought to be given the opportunity to do it. It will take some education for sure, because at first blush it sounds, as it did to me at first blush, as though we're just putting up yet another override, or the timing is wrong because it's going to get in the way of other overrides we have to have. But properly explained, it's difficult to understand why we would turn down an opportunity to get 100%, maybe next year it'll be 50%. Why would we turn down an opportunity to get matching funds for projects which we are going to undertake? Therefore, I urge you to vote in favor of this, turn down the motion for reconsideration, put it to the voters, and between now and the spring, let the debate go on. But I submit that the voters are very capable of figuring out that 100% or 50% reimbursement is better than going it alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Way up back, sir. You moved the previous question? Is that what you did? Okay, a motion to move the question takes a 2/3 vote. It's not debatable. And so there was a second, so we will have to have a vote on whether to vote. This takes a 2/3 vote to decide to vote. So all those in favor of moving the previous question, please rise and the tellers will count. Well, point of order. Yes, sir. No, sir. The gentleman made a motion to shut off debate and then vote on reconsideration without any further discussion. So that takes, we got to decide that vote. There's no debate on that. So this vote is a vote to shut off debate and then vote on whether we want to have reconsideration. Okay? Okay, so all those who want to move the previous question. Twenty. 22. 20. 27. All those opposed, please rise. 3. I'm sorry, 3, 6, 3. 89 having voted in the affirmative, 18 in the negative, a total of 107 votes, 72 required for passage. The motion passes. So what that means, we are now ordered to vote on the motion for reconsideration. Now let me just explain. That's also a 2/3 vote, so we will count. If reconsideration passes, we will then vote once again on the whole concept under this article. If it does not pass, we will be done with this matter. So all those in favor of Mr. Haley's motion to reconsider, please rise and the tellers will count. 8. 4. 10. 17. All those opposed, please rise. 19. 18. 18 again. 17. 39 having voted in the affirmative, 72 in the negative, not necessarily, not a 2/3 vote in favor, so the motion for reconsideration fails. And ladies and gentlemen, it's moved and seconded that this meeting be dissolved. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Amen, and the hour is late. If you're still watching here at this hour, the third and final session of Winchester's Fall Town Meeting has just wrapped up. So let's go and recap what happened this evening. We open up with Articles 6 and 7. Article 6 was to create a new type of zoning, a zoning overlay district for the town, but it was considered along with Article 7 because this was specifically designed to apply to the so-called Purcell Pansy Patch on Cambridge Street. We heard from Peter Van Aken from the Planning Board saying that this type of zoning allows for better empty nester housing and also allows for better public oversight than single-family development. He said the current zoning in place promotes gated communities like the Ledges and not a neighborhood feeling. Because both articles were being considered together, we heard from Bob Duffy, who was the purchaser, whose company purchased the property on Cambridge Street last spring. He said they're a family-owned company. They've met with many boards and the neighbors in about 40 meetings. He said the company could have put in 25 to 35 single-family homes under the current zoning. He commented that the proposed plan for the area has no access from Salisbury Street, and all infrastructure will be privately maintained. The proposal calls for 50 units of luxury townhouses. 5 of them are to be affordable units sold at approximately $164,000. It does preserve the farmhouse on the property. Most of the townhouses are 2-bedroom, and they're subject to design review by the planning board. Town Manager Mel Kleckner talked about the development agreement that has been that would be entered into under Article 7 between the town and the developer, Mr. Duffy's company, including such items as reimbursement of town's consulting expenses, limiting the development on the property, providing again for affordable housing, historic preservation, municipal easements, water system design, infrastructure studies, traffic and pedestrian safety, including a $75,000 grant to the town for sidewalk and area improvements, and a supplemental tax agreement that as a provision of the deed that would not allow, in the event the property was passed to a tax-exempt institution, would continue to collect funds in lieu of taxes in perpetuity. Planning Board recommended favorable action. The Finance Committee recommended favorable action. Paul Collins from the Council on Aging said the council supports it because of a lack of housing for seniors in town. A Salisbury Street resident also spoke in favor. She commented on her memories of the Pansy Patch and said that she had attended many of these meetings and praised the Duffy Company. Also, we heard from Stephen Parkhurst from the Conservation Committee, who said the committee had not made a formal position on it, but was generally favorable. And as a result, Article 6, to create this new overlay district called an Attached Residential Development Overlay District, was passed by a vote of 145 to 7. And then the Article 7, which was to apply this newly created zoning to the parcel on Cambridge Street, was passed by a vote of 130 to 9. After recess, Article 8 was the next one up for consideration. That was a proposal to enter into a purchase agreement or authorize the town to enter into a purchase agreement on the Lock Hamilton Farm on Cambridge Street, another large open space. We heard from Tom Howley from the Board of Selectmen that they had been notified by a company called Avalon Bay of their intent to develop that purchase and develop the property with 256 rental units under 40 of affordable housing. Mr. Howley said this Hamilton Farm is the closest working farm to Boston. It's on the National Historic and Register of Historic Places, has 5 buildings on it. He said it would probably cost the town about $10 to $15 million to purchase. He said the town went through several scenarios with an advisor, how the property would be developed for single-family homes, for cluster development, and in both those scenarios using no more than 50% of the land. Again, if the town was to purchase and develop the land. He said in this financial input, 3-bedroom units were limited to 10%. He said 256 units, the negative impact to the town could possibly be from $125,000 to $650,000. In other words, costing the town more than it took in tax revenue. He said that the Trust for Public Land may have some interest in the property. That trust potentially could purchase the property and convey it back to the town with restrictions. He said that the town has had no contact with the owners and will continue to work on that. But ultimately, this article was indefinitely postponed because there is no offer to purchase at this time. What the selectmen said was if there is an offer to purchase and the town has a right of first refusal, they will call for a special town meeting. He also mentioned that a lot of the documents and the studies are on the town's website and encouraged people to look at them. So Article 8, indefinitely postponed. Article 9, getting the most debate of the evening, to adopt a motion to put on the March 2007 ballot a question to the voters to accept the so-called Massachusetts Community Preservation Act. This initially, the article was to request a 2.5% surcharge on property taxes. That was amended to 1.5%. We heard from the proponent, John Clemson, from the Historical Commission. He said it allows the towns to purchase historical properties, open space, or use for affordable housing. He said currently the state matches dollar for dollar all the amounts put into this fund. And it also moves the town up, he said, in grants, in consideration for other grants from the state. He said it could be used to repair historical structures belonging to the town, such as the town hall. CPA funds, Community Preservation Act funds, would be spent by town meeting on recommendations by a committee similar to the Capital Planning Committee. He said that a 1.5% surcharge would add about $98 a year to the average tax bill and would put about $1.2 million into a fund. He said also that 70% of the towns that had voted on this have passed it. Drew Potaro talked on the financial impacts of the Community Preservation Act. He says the matching funds from the state make it urgent. He said had the town adopted this back when it first came up in around 2000, we could have added $3 to $5 million additional funding from the state and covered some projects that the town has already funded out of its own pocket. In summary, he said leaving money on the table. It is leaving money on the table not to pass this act. Again, remembering that this is just to put it on the ballot next spring. The Finance Committee likes the matching funds, but it has risks and said it was another committee competing for funding from the taxpayers. A town meeting member expressed his worry about eminent domain, saying he doesn't want the town to be able to take his property and that this was giving away freedoms, in his word. We heard from the planning board. The planning board supported this article. He said it takes the pressure off some projects like Town Hall, Sanborn House, and the playgrounds, and that 33% of the communities that in the state have adopted it. It would also attract they said it would also attract other grants, and that the state grades towns on their acceptance of the CPA. Maureen Meister from the planning board made a motion to reduce it from 1.5% to 0.5%, and that failed. And ultimately, the article was passed, Article 9 was passed by a vote of 66 to 61. We got into, and as we got towards the end of the meeting, we heard that Article 11, the report of the Personnel Board to fund negotiated contracts, was passed with a warning from the Finance Committee that the town would have to do a better job of controlling contract raises. Then it started to get interesting. If you were watching in the last few minutes, Selectman Peter Haley made a motion to reconsider Article 9, which prompted a count to see how many town meeting members were still present. Articles that had to be considered after at the end of the town meeting or the next town meeting, which there wasn't going to be. Articles 19, 20, and 21 were indefinitely postponed, being housekeeping articles, and that returned us back to reconsidering Article number 9, the Community Preservation Act. Mr. Haley referred to that article, referred to the override that did not set aside. He refers to that, let's see if I can read my own notes here, refers to that article that did not set aside, he said it was contrary to the best interests of the voters. We heard from David Mortensen, who rose and asked why would the town turn down matching funds? Well, then there was a motion to adjourn, which was failed, and I'll take that back. Actually, there was back up there. There was a motion to adjourn after the motion to reconsider Article 9, which failed, which would have and had the motion to adjourn succeeded, there would have been another meeting of town meeting on Thursday. So the motion to adjourn failed. And then finally there was a motion to move the question, to shut off the debate. That passed by 89 to 18. And then a motion to reconsider failed by a vote of 39 to 72. And if you can keep all that straight, interesting wrap up to Winchester's Fall Town Meeting. And we want to, if you're still watching here, we want to thank you for staying with us here at this late hour. And if you just tuned in, Winchester has wrapped up their third and final session of Fall Town Meeting. So we want to thank you for watching us. We want to thank you for watching our live coverage here at WinCam. For all of us here on the WinCam staff, we appreciate your viewership and look forward to seeing you again. I'm Alan Iden. Have a great night.